Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426 Gareth wakes up. Sarah could only cry along the way, but Renee was told everything about her sister and Marin. Marin is from the New World. This time, the evil gods in the New World are fighting, and he can't stay there anymore, so he has to take his adventure team back to the Old World. Although he has good martial arts, he has no way to get a good income, so he can only rely on Prince A Fury, and relying on his elegant demeanor and being a rare high-level extraordinary on the continent, he has a relationship with a royal girl. Charlotte thought of Miss Pumpkin, and then thought about Renee's unwillingness to get close to the unicorn, and she roughly knew it in her heart. This Marin is not a good thing. Well, Charlotte Mecklen, is not that kind of person. Charlotte was too lazy to think about it. What exactly does Marin want to do? But he certainly doesn't want to do anything good. Otherwise, with his strength, he might have a very prestigious job in Fars and marry the prince's daughter if he works hard for a few years. But Marin definitely didn't want to work so hard. He must have a shortcut that Charlotte didn't like. In short, Charlotte didn't regret killing this guy at all. If it was another situation, the two Miss Axel were lost somewhere else, and it had nothing to do with him, Charlotte would just laugh it off, and wouldn't do anything at all, nor would he be angry about it. He only cares about things that are related to him, not people who have nothing to do with him. Just like on the internet in later generations, many people will fight for so-called justice for strangers thousands of miles away, but they may not have seen their loved ones for a long time. Charlotte is a math teacher who is out of tune with the public. He doesn't care about strangers, but only cares about his relatives and friends around him. He doesn't care about the New World thousands of miles away, but only wants to take care of the future earldom of South Seraph. But Charlotte also learned some things about the New World through Renee's description. He remembered the female pirate Red Eagle he met not long ago. At that time, he didn't feel anything, but now he really feels that the days over there in the New World may be really difficult. Even the saints and high-level extraordinary people can't survive. You can imagine how difficult life is. But in other words, I'm afraid that only people like Red Eagle and Marin, who have mastered extraordinary powers, can leave the New World alive. Many ordinary people are afraid that they don't have the ability to leave. Although this world can manufacture magic warships, its overall technological strength is still quite backward, and it is impossible to manufacture enough ships for a large number of immigrants from the two continents. From the New World to the Old World, I'm afraid that all the ships in the world can only transport hundreds of thousands of people a year, not to mention how can anyone organize all the ships? The current transportation between the two continents is just a drop in the bucket for those who want to escape. But Charlotte also knows that he can't do anything about it. Even a saint like Red Eagle can only leave the New World sadly. What virtue and ability does he have? Can he save so many people? He is not a god? Charlotte once wanted to go to the New World a long time ago to find a way to solve the maze evil god, which may come at any time. But now he finally understands what the great priest Oxrating said at the time: produce more offspring. The New World probably has no way to solve the problem of the evil god. The people there can only rely on more births to fight the terrible mortality rate. If there is a way to deal with the evil god, how could they not use it? Charlotte took the two Miss Axel back to the small town of Rama. He explained a few words to Antonio and asked Antonio to explain to the two ladies. He really didn't want to get involved in this hot potato. Antonio went for a while and came back to borrow someone from Charlotte. He hoped to let Regulus send the two Miss Axel back to Strasbourg. The reason why he asked Regulus to send people was because this saint was the oldest and could reduce the probability of scandals. Charlotte readily agreed, but when Regulus heard about this, he said that he didn't plan to send the two ladies alone. Charlotte had no choice but to send Vigo out as well, and let the two of them send the two ladies to Strasbourg. After solving this matter, Charlotte asked about Antonio's situation again. Antonio was quite excited and said lightly, "During the 2 days you were away, my strength has been declining. Most of the power that the goddess has improved has left me. However, I have stabilized the 24th level. Although I was called the future strongest man in Fars before, that was only because I was young enough, not because of how strong I am. In addition to my father, there are many people who are stronger than me, but from now on, you can call me the second strongest man in Fars, Because in FARS, in addition to my father, I am the only one who is at the 24th level, except for my father. There is no one stronger than me in FARS. What's more, I have the Dark Moon in my hand. Even my father, Constantine, Uncle Juno, and the Count of Champagne may not be able to defeat me in battle. Charlotte looked at this brother-in-law and suddenly felt that this was his most stable backer in the future. The stick was really worth it. Charlotte and Antonio rested in Rama for a full half-month. Not only did they wait for the return of Regulus and Vigo, but they also made all the holy orders recover their strength and restored the combat effectiveness of the two knights. Although they suffered heavy losses, the 8 holy orders were still there, and they still maintained a crushing combat power. Antonio was preparing to attack the dukedom of Mossard again, and Charlotte had no objection. At this time, someone came to report that their captive, Mossard's younger brother, Gareth, who had summoned the evil god, had woken up. When the black dragon went to rob the blood spirit, it also robbed this holy order back. He had been in a coma, and his soul was impacted by the fire evil god and fell into a state of collapse. No one knew whether he could recover. Charlotte only hated that there was no magic contract document on hand, otherwise Gareth would have been made a butler. At this time, hearing that Gareth had woken up, even Antonio was very surprised, and went to meet this old holy order of the empire with Charlotte. Although Gareth's fame and status are far inferior to his brother, his strength is comparable to Mossard, otherwise he would not be able to withstand and summon the evil god, and he has not died yet. You must know that the real Charlotte Mecklen can summon the evil god, and then he will die directly. The current one is Charlotte Mecklen Wong Hei Sheng teacher. When Charlotte saw Gareth, the eyes of this saint were as innocent as a child, and he was full of childlike curiosity when looking around. Charlotte's heart moved slightly, and she thought to herself, he won't lose his memory, right? Tentatively called out, son. You finally woke up. Chapter 427, The World and Gareth, one of them must be broken. Antonio looked at Charlotte with the eyes of seeing the evil god. He racked his brains but couldn't think of such a coquettish doctrine. Gareth is also a strong man of the old generation. He is not much younger than Mossard. In fact, he is 2 or 3 years older than Cresto and 5 or 6 years older than Medefis. Well, maybe older than Charlotte's biological father. It's a pity that Antonio is not a time traveler, otherwise he would definitely think of words like this guy is not a son of man. Gareth looked confused and asked, you are my father? Then who am I? Charlotte said righteously, Gareth Mecklen. You are Gareth Mecklen, the only son of Charlotte Mecklen. Originally, you were the only heir to the earldom of Mecklen, but because you were obsessed with martial arts, you gave up the inheritance rights. But I will always welcome you, my son. If Antonio was not around, Charlotte would definitely arrange a mother for Gareth. Well, Anne is not suitable, but the senior sister is really okay. If it really doesn't work, Princess May or Miss Sophia Gallinold can do it. Anyway, they won't meet each other, and this broken lie will be exposed if it is not said. But with Antonio around, Charlotte dare not say anything nonsense, so she can only leave such a big loophole. When Gareth heard his name, he really felt familiar. When he looked at Antonio and Charlotte, although he felt that Antonio was more familiar, Antonio was too young. When he looked at Charlotte, what emerged in his mind was a silver snake tail flapping wildly. This little snake seemed to be very happy about something good. Well, a ridiculous but completely reasonable thought naturally appeared in Gareth's mind. My father is so young? He hesitated for a moment and called out, Dad. Charlotte felt very relieved and touched Gareth's forehead, and said kindly, son. You were seriously injured in the battle with the evil god Enlulu. I don't know how worried I was about you. We all have to thank the Serpent of Fate for waking up. I'll take you to the Temple of the Serpent of Fate later, and you must prepare the best sacrifice. Gareth nodded slowly, and the silver snake tail that appeared in his mind suddenly stiffened and trembled constantly. After a while, it frantically flapped again, and seemed to be more excited than before. Antonio had a little arc on his forehead. He deeply felt that one of this world and Gareth must be broken. He didn't want to expose Charlotte, so he could only wait for Charlotte to comfort her son. When she came out with him, he lowered his voice and asked, what if his memory is restored? Charlotte shrugged and said, it's restored. Anyway, I got the upper hand. Besides, it's not that easy to have your soul shattered by the evil god. Well, Charlotte immediately thought of a counter-example. His soul was shattered by the battle between the two evil gods, and then it was restored intact. But he was not worried immediately. Anyway, I got the upper hand, who cares? Antonio asked a second question, saying, What if someone tells him his true identity? Charlotte laughed and said, "Don't worry about that. I will write a novel tailor-made for him, so that everyone in this world will think that he is my son." How can a few haters change the original work? There are no fanfiction in this world. Antonio didn't know the terms haters and fanfiction, but they did make sense. When a person's experience is written into a novel, and the novel sells extremely well, even unrelated people will take it seriously, not to mention someone deliberately brainwashing him. He was full of sympathy for Gareth and said, "I hope you don't write that Gareth's childhood is too miserable. The rest of his life is destined to be a tragedy. Let him have a happy childhood." Even though it's all fake, Charlotte readily agreed. With just a few simple sentences, the two confirmed Gareth's happy childhood. Charlotte also decided to give him a small label, so that when Gareth was a child, he was often taken home by his elder sister, given a bath, and given delicious big steamed buns. Who dares to say that this kind of childhood is not happy? Even if Gareth lost his memory and was played by Charlotte, the two did not dare to let him go to the battlefield. Antonio was ready to launch a battle against the Duke of Mossard afterwards, and Charlotte thought it was no problem. Without the protection of the evil god, Mossard was vulnerable. The two men rested for 2 days, and then took their respective knights to attack the Duke of Mossard again. During this period, the two did not send out scouts because of insufficient troops, so when they saw the Oslo Kingdom joint army camp, only a ruin was left. They looked at each other, and they did not expect Mossard to escape. The two then attacked the Duke of Mossard, destroying the city all the way, and encountered almost no resistance. Soon the two divided the work. Antonio led 2 knights to attack the city all the way to collect the remaining nobles, and Charlotte continued to collect and surrender local armed forces in the rear and confiscate the wealth of the rebellious nobles. After more than a month, the two finally conquered the entire territory of the Kingdom of Oslo. Antonio also knew why Charlotte's Knights of Favonius had so many members. Charlotte almost fully tapped the war potential of the entire Kingdom of Oslo, and turned this war potential into a huge merchant group. The two soon received news that Mossard had escaped to the Black Phoenix. After receiving the news, the two mourned for the Duke of Fars for a while, and then prepared to return to Strasbourg. Because the grand hall where His Majesty Breton ascended the throne was about to be held, they had to appear as the most important figures in the ceremony. Charlotte took all the troops recruited in the Kingdom of Oslo and sent them to South Seraph, and handed over the management of the Dukedom of Mossard to Antonio. The old Earl of Brittany has already promised him the South Seraph territory. If he swallows up the Duchy of Mossard, it will be a bit too arrogant. Moreover, Charlotte will get part of the Black Phoenix territory in the future. Giving the Duchy of Mossard to Antonio will be of great help to him in gaining a foothold in the Breton dynasty. Is there anything more cost-effective and rewarding than bribing the future emperor? Antonio is destined to become the future emperor of Fars. The two had just set off when they met a messenger from Strasbourg halfway, urging them to go back and attend the coronation ceremony of the Emperor of Brittany. Chapter 428. There is moonlight in the sky and starlight, and she is the third light on earth. Charlotte and Antonio joined Anne in Lahima, marched all the way, and returned to Strasbourg a few days before the coronation ceremony. Antonio, as the new Count of Brittany, was called by the court etiquette officer for training when he returned to Strasbourg. Charlotte and Anne were surrounded by another group of people, preparing dresses for the coronation ceremony. The coronation ceremony of the new Emperor of Fars, the first emperor of the Breton dynasty, was taken very seriously from top to bottom, and no mistakes were allowed. Charlotte did not even go back to her 2 residences, but lived directly in the palace, which was only a few hundred steps away from where Anne lived. The two could see each other every day, which was already the ultimate honor. Charlotte was an ordinary math teacher in her previous life, and in this life she was just an ordinary person from a merchant family. When he divided the family, his brother was already very generous and heroic, but he only got a few hundred gold écus, which was barely enough to buy a house in Strasbourg. Compared to the old noble Breton family and the soon-to-be royal Breton family, Charlotte still has a very humble origin. Charlotte doesn't even have a formal dress. Her usual clothes are all of a very civilian style. The last time she attended the funeral of Lady Nanny Breton Axel, Anne borrowed a dress from her father's wardrobe. There was even a Breton family crest on that dress. So for the emperor's coronation ceremony, he must have several custom-made dresses. And they can't be ordinary dresses, because he is the Count of Mecklenburg, a new noble in the empire, and the style is particularly complicated. In addition to the dress, Charlotte also needs to customize a new crest. The Mecklen family was originally just an ordinary businessman, not aristocracy at all. Charlotte remembered that the Mecklen family didn't have a crest, and even if there was one, it couldn't be used. It had to be customized. Customizing a crest is a big project. With such a short time, it's impossible to design it from scratch. Only with the tacit consent of His Majesty Brittany, the family crest of Prince Rudmire Axel was used directly as the blueprint, and the logo of the Brittany family was added, which represented that the Mecklen family would have royal blood of 2 generations. Well, and would bring the blood of the Axel and Brittany families. Yes, the family crest of the Mecklen family is also a golden pheasant. Surrounded by the golden pheasant, there is also a small silver snake. This is one of the family crests of the Brittany family. The Brittany family has believed in the Serpent of Fate for generations, and even the family cemetery is in the Temple of the Serpent of Fate. In addition to the dress, Charlotte had to be tossed by various cumbersome court etiquette. Although he was very annoyed, as a math teacher, he could calculate it accurately. At this time, being honest was the best solution. One day before the ceremony, he finally met His Majesty Brittany. The old Earl was still in a bad mood. He called his son, daughter and Charlotte over and just had an ordinary dinner. This was the last ordinary family dinner before he ascended the throne. The old Earl looked at his son and was very pleased. He did not expect that his son would be promoted to the 24th level after going to suppress the rebellion, becoming the peak of the saint level like himself. And he also received the blessing of Lady Black Moon and obtained the saint level weapon, Dark Moon. He looked at Annie again and had nothing to say. The old Earl could still recall his violent mood of wiping out Hokuir Yinxashi again and again, wanting to shoot a certain bastard to death. But this bastard, really, broke the old Earl's fingers one by one, and snatched his favorite daughter away so tyrannically, without saying thank you from beginning to end. He looked at Charlotte again, and besides being irritable, he also had some preference. No one can refuse the prodigal son to return. The meal was quite dull. When the last glass of champagne was served, the old Count of Brittany said lightly, "Antonio, take good care of your sister in the future." He glanced at his daughter with a complicated expression and whispered, "Annie, Aunt Karen will be with you and take care of you for me." Anne was slightly surprised, and then she was a little happy. She had been taken care of by Aunt Karen since she was a child. Now she was leaving 58 6th Avenue, where she had lived since she was a child. She was still a little uneasy in her heart. With Aunt Karen around, she felt much more at ease. The old Earl took one last look at Charlotte and asked, "Can you tell me why there was such a drastic change after you met Anne?" Charlotte whispered, "Perhaps you can't understand. I am an ordinary person from a merchant family. My talent is also average. I didn't even get promoted to extraordinary in college. Although I got a position in the central government office after graduation, it was just a first-level clerk. According to the Empire's promotion system, if everything goes well in my life, I will be promoted to a second or third-level clerk when I am about 50 years old. There is no possibility of going higher. After all, my background really can't support me to go any further, and I was involved in a murder case at the time. As everyone knows, my boss, Miss Mendelman, hates a certain type of man the most. I was very worried about losing my job at the time. When Anne appeared, there was moonlight and starlight in the sky. She was the third light in the world, illuminated all the haze in my heart. I thought at the time that we were just a chance encounter and would miss each other. I swear to the snake of fate that if I can meet Miss Anne again, I will take the brightest star in the sky for her." Antonio's eyes sparkled, and he whispered, "What a beautiful sentence." The old Earl sneered, and the murderous intent that had not sprouted for a long time almost emerged again. He was 70% to 80% sure that Charlotte Mecklen, the bastard, was lying, but he had no evidence. If Charlotte knew that the old Earl thought so, she would definitely say to her future father-in-law, "Don't have any thoughts that are not conducive to unity in the future." He was regretting at this moment, why didn't it snow on the night he met Anne? She secretly sighed in her heart, if it had snowed that day, Mr. Yu Guangzhong, your words would have been of great use. Compared with your original sentence, what I changed is still a bit inappropriate. Anne stretched out her little hand and quietly held Charlotte's, but silently said in her heart, "Thank you, Aunt Sophie. She is really the best aunt in the world. If it weren't for her, I don't know what kind of treasure I would have missed. If it weren't for her, my life would be different. If it weren't for her, I would never see such a beautiful scenery in the world. From now on, I will take Mr. Mecklen to pay homage to her every year." Well, this time it was very Anne. Chapter 429, A Legend. This meal was Charlotte's first time to eat at the Breton family. Well, it's not 58 6th Avenue. But it's more prestigious than 58 6th Avenue. Although the old Earl was not very happy during the meal, the new Earl of Brittany was very happy. Charlotte was actually quite happy too. Although the dinner was a little restrained and the taste was not very good, if he was still on Earth, he would definitely take a selfie and post it on various social media. Today, I had dinner with the old emperor, the crown prince, and Princess Anne in the palace. The style is full. What else do you need to have style? Can the taste be reflected in the photo? But the style really can. After dinner, the old Earl did not keep them. After all, he was going to ascend the throne the next day, and he also had to conserve his energy. Charlotte said goodbye to Antonio happily and returned to her residence with Anne. The two said goodnight to each other and went back. Charlotte practiced hard for a while, but felt that his high spirituality was a little unstable. He did not choose to practice the more exquisite blood runes, but chose to construct a new flaming hand. Charlotte cultivated 7 flaming hands at first, and then never tried to condense new ones. This ability is quite useful. He relied on this technique to turn defeat into victory in several duels. Charlotte just wanted to stabilize it. Recently, because of his contact with the evil god and looking directly at the Black Moon Lady, one of the 9 righteous gods, his spirituality increased too crazy. The higher the spirituality, the faster and faster the practice of extraordinary secrets. People with high spirituality are more likely to become extraordinary and advance, but if the spirituality is unstable, problems are likely to occur during practice. At this time, practicing a simpler spell can help balance the spirituality and stabilize the spirituality. Charlotte spent several hours and thought that there would not be much results. After all, the flaming hand is a secret method that consumes a lot of energy and time for each additional condensation. However, he did not expect that the structure was unusually smooth and he easily condensed the 8th flaming hand. After the flaming hand was formed, Charlotte tried to distract herself and manipulate 8 flaming hands at the same time. There were indeed more choices in the battle, and more combinations of weapons. At this time, it was not long before the coronation ceremony, so Charlotte did not dare to sleep. She just closed her eyes and dozed for a while to recuperate. More than an hour later, a court etiquette officer called out from outside the door, "Count Mecklen, you should be ready." Charlotte smiled slightly and walked out of the bedroom. A dozen court etiquette officers helped Charlotte put on her dress and put on a ceremonial rapier for him. This rapier has almost no practical value, because it has no blade, and it is only the length of a palm when pulled out. The key point is that the scabbard is inlaid with countless gems, which is magnificent. Under the guidance of the etiquette officer, Charlotte was taken to the right place. At this time, there were already countless nobles, the new royal knights, and ordinary civilians inside and outside the palace, forming a sea of people. Suddenly, a ray of light rushed to the sky in the distance. Charlotte carefully distinguished it and found that it should come from the Champs-Élysées, the Gate of Glory. Then, another divine light rushed into the sky. Charlotte judged the direction and it should be the lighthouse, the miracle left by the old man with the lantern. Not long after, dozens of miracle buildings in Strasbourg burst into glory and rushed into the sky to become a huge domed glass cover, making the whole Strasbourg seem to be favored by the gods and guarding peace. 9 high priests from different temples of the true gods floated onto a high platform in front of the palace, and each read a lengthy divinely granted document, representing their own true gods, recognizing the old Count of Brittany as the new Emperor of Fars. With the appearance of the court band and the guard of honor, a motorcade appeared from somewhere outside the palace, and His Majesty Emperor Breton appeared in front of the public. Antonio, who looked like a god, rode a white horse and guarded his father. Everyone knew that this tall and handsome young man was the new Count of Brittany, the Breton dynasty of the Fars Empire, and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. A little behind was the carriage of Princess Anne of Brittany. But this time, it was no longer Miss Pumpkin. She had changed to a more luxurious, brand new carriage specially made for this ceremony. Miss Pumpkin's carriage was no longer brand new, and it was obviously not worthy of such a grand ceremony. Under the guidance of the etiquette officer, Charlotte urged the carefully selected warhorse under her crotch and joined the motorcade halfway. At the same time, the other 10 Breton knights also joined the motorcade with him. Charlotte was fully prepared to make sure that she performed flawlessly and waited patiently for the ceremony to proceed one by one. Around noon, The 9 great priests of the true gods simultaneously urged their extraordinary powers and merged into a crown. When the crown floated up and was worn on the head of Mecklenburg, all the ceremonies were finally completed. From now on, there is no old Earl Mecklenburg, only the new Majesty Mecklenburg. He has become the new emperor of the Fars Empire. From now on, the Axel dynasty that has ruled this country for hundreds of years has come to an end, and the new Brittany dynasty has opened a new chapter. Mecklenburg led everyone, walked into the palace, and officially sat on the throne of the emperor. He looked around and said, I, Mecklenburg, represent the 9 true gods, represent the people of Fars, and hold the power of the empire. I will work hard for the country and dedicate everything I have. Next came the congratulatory envoys from various countries, and even the hostile baron sent envoys. Of course, no one from the Black Phoenix came. In the afternoon, when Charlotte was still drowsy, she heard the Emperor of Brittany say indifferently, Lord Mecklen, you have made immeasurable contributions to the empire. Not only have you been invincible on the battlefield, but you have also won powerful allies for the empire in diplomacy, and helped the empire gain friendship from Ingrimmar and the Lionheart dynasty. I hereby confer upon you the title of Earl Charlotte Mecklen, and your fief is South Erlaf. From today on, the free territory of South Erlaf will be changed to the Earldom of Mecklen. Charlotte thanked the new emperor for the award according to court etiquette. At this time, he did not need to turn his head to look, he could feel the countless eyes gathered on him. These eyes were envious, jealous, friendly, evil, and countless complex human emotions. Charlotte Mecklen's journey from a merchant's son to an imperial earl is a legend. Chapter 430, The 12 Nights of Lion Spring. The second person named by the emperor was, of course, Antonio. He was officially canonized as the Count of Brittany and took control of the territory of the Brittany family. As the 12 knights who had pledged their allegiance were canonized one by one, Prince A Fury appeared with a smile, and he said loudly, when the Fars Empire was in danger, His Majesty Brittany even felt tired. There were 12 knights who always followed the emperor closely and helped him accomplish great deeds. They took off their armor and battle robes at the Lion Fountain, bathed in the hot spring, washed away everything in the past, swore allegiance to His Majesty Emperor Mecklenburg, and opened a new dynasty. On behalf of the royal family, I hereby announce that the Lion Fountain will be a symbol of the prosperity of the empire, and a palace will be built on the original site. This palace will be a royal palace, and only the royal family and the descendants of the 12 knights of the Lion Fountain are allowed to enter and worship. Charlotte was slightly stunned. He could never have thought that the dirt pit at the beginning could actually get the title of Lion Fountain. The Fountain of Lions has a special meaning in any country in the old world. The lion represents the most loyal generals around the emperor. Their bravery and loyalty can be recorded in history and passed down forever. Well, the Robin family also had the prominent status of the Grand Duke of the Fountain of Lions. However, His Majesty the Emperor of Brittany did not build a great empire by fighting in the south and the north, but by a coup, so the highest position of these 12 knights is only the Earl. It is not as stylish as the 7 founding dukes of the Fountain of Lions of King Axel. Charlotte was not very interested in the next canonization, until the emperor called and he suddenly became energetic, and was canonized as Her Royal Highness, which was not unexpected, but what Charlotte did not expect was that Ens fiefdom was actually the original Duke of Mossard, and even included the 7 noble territories that rebelled with Mossard. In terms of the area of the fiefdom alone, Her Royal Highness Princess Anne of Brittany can be called the first in the empire. If the territory of the Principality of Moldova is added, Anne can be called the most powerful woman in the old world, without a doubt. She even far surpassed the Grand Duchess Misu who defected to Byron. The Duchy of Mossard borders the territory of South Serif. In other words, Charlotte and Anne's fiefdoms are closely connected. After the two got married, the territories naturally formed a complete area. It was not until the evening that the coronation ceremony ended and the all-night revelry palace banquet began. Charlotte, Antonio, and Anne were all the focus of the banquet. Even Charlotte had to deal with it for a long time. He just wanted to take some time to find a quiet place, and then he saw Prince A Fury coming over. The prince raised his glass slightly and said, "Thank you for what you have done for my 2 daughters, we will be solid allies in the future." Charlotte nodded slightly, and Prince A Fury did not say much. He just smiled and went to deal with other nobles. Charlotte had not expected that the matter of the 2 Miss Axel would have a follow-up, and that she had gained the favor of Prince A Fury. As for the matter of the ally, well, This matter must not be publicized anyway. Charlotte smiled and said a few words to an unknown nobleman, and finally found an opportunity to quietly slip out of the banquet hall of the palace. He looked up at the sky. The miraculous buildings of the 9 gods were still releasing divine light, making Strasbourg under the night still look like daytime, with a different kind of beauty. Charlotte suddenly felt unreal. Although he had come to this point step by step, most of it was coincidence, some was luck, and hard work accounted for only a very small part. Even his personal strength was not all the result of hard work. If he had not faced the evil god directly and had not come into contact with a righteous god, and had not received several spiritual enhancements, he would never have been able to cultivate to the 17th level. Charlotte said to herself in her heart, life and fate are really wonderful. We are caught in the whirlpool of the times. Some people bravely fight the waves and become the tide riders, while others capsize and fall from the heights. I don't know what I will become in a few years or even decades, but I still hope that the war will be over as soon as possible. After all, in the old continent without war, the nobles are very safe. On Earth, although everyone talks about class solidification, in fact, class mobility is still very strong. There are very few real century-old companies. Large companies with tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars can go bankrupt or change hands at any time. Even the top officials of the country are frequently replaced. On Earth, it is common to change a president every 4 years, but in the old continent, the emperor has never changed for decades. If you meet a high-level extraordinary emperor, it is not uncommon for him to live for more than 100 years. The nobles can easily pass on for hundreds of years, and they will hardly fall in wealth or power. If it weren't for this war, if it weren't for the failure of the rebellion, top nobles like Prince Rudmire and Duke Mossert could have been passed down with the Fars Empire for thousands of years. But the war was different. Too many nobles died in Fars: Archduke Ferdinand, Archduke Joseph, Baron File of Silver Pigeon Castle. It's simply too many to count. The same is true for other countries. The number of nobles who died in Byron and Black Phoenix is no less than that in Fars. Only Ingrima is an island country, and currently only the navy has been dispatched, so the number of nobles killed is less. As long as the war is over, Charlotte can live a comfortable and safe life. Well, he still has to deal with the evil god. Charlotte suddenly saw a ray of light passing through the sky. It must be a saint. However, Strasbourg was now covered by the light released by dozens of miracle buildings of the true gods. Even a saint could not land. He could not help but whispered, "Ruff. Go out and see who has come to Strasbourg. No need, don't fight. Also, don't fly directly from the palace. It's too ostentatious. Leave the palace, walk further away, and then fly up." The old goat was qualified to enter the palace as a butler, but he was not qualified to participate in the palace's night banquet. He left the palace silently, feeling that I am finally free. The golden goat Rolf really watched Charlotte, step by step, from an ordinary extraordinary to now. Although Charlotte himself is not a saint yet, he is only one step away. But is it important whether he is a saint? This guy already has 7 saint subordinates. This makes the old goat very upset. He had thought about how to defeat Charlotte and how to unlock the magic contract document, but according to his current attitude, even if he had the chance to unlock the magic contract document, he would secretly pretend that he didn't have it. He was afraid that he would be surrounded and beaten to death by several saints in the name of punishing traitors. Chapter 431, Less than 10,000 words a day is a crime. Charlotte arranged for the golden goat Rolf to do something, and she finally found a place to relax. If it was any other banquet, Charlotte would definitely leave early, but this night banquet was different, and Anne was still there, so he definitely couldn't leave. After relaxing for a while, Charlotte was about to return to the banquet when she saw a black robe. Charlotte was shocked. He hadn't seen this black robe for a long time. Shouldn't the owner of this black robe be an Ingrimer? How could he appear here? Princess May Guillaume walked directly to Charlotte without any disguise and asked, "Are you surprised to see me?" Charlotte nodded desperately. It would be strange if he was not surprised. Princess May said calmly, "I am here as a diplomatic envoy to congratulate His Majesty Brittany on his accession to the throne." Charlotte then remembered that, in addition to the Black Phoenix, envoys from 31 countries in the old world had come to congratulate him, and he had even chatted with the envoys of various countries. After all, he was one of the important characters in this night banquet, but he never expected that Ingrima would actually send Princess May here. Charlotte's mind was in a knot. and he had no idea how to deal with this situation. Princess May didn't seem to have figured out how to deal with this matter. After a long while, she whispered, "Have you not been working hard to finish your manuscript recently?" Charlotte nodded desperately. He really hadn't been working hard to finish your manuscript recently, and even Anne had slacked off. There was no way. Anne had just been on a diplomatic mission to the Lionheart dynasty, and had accompanied him to conquer Duke Mussard. Miss Brittany. No, Her Royal Highness Princess Brittany was also very busy. Princess May seemed to have a lot to say, but in the end it turned into one sentence: "It's wrong for you not to work hard to finish the manuscript. There are still many readers who are eagerly looking forward to it. If you write less than 10,000 words a day, it's a crime. If you write more than 30,000 words a day, it's considered diligent. If Fars's quick-handed clerks are not efficient enough, I can send you a team from Anglima." Charlotte was about to say no, but she saw Princess May's eyes, and there was a slight heartache in her eyes. Suddenly he couldn't say anything to refuse. Princess May and Charlotte passed by each other, and she suddenly turned her head slightly and whispered in Charlotte's ear, "Originally, I didn't want your queen bee. But Sophia Galinold used it to become famous in the 7 seas, which made me very unhappy. After the war, I will take back the queen bee and let it park next to 699 South Riverside Street in Seventies. I want everyone in the world to know that it is May Guillaume's ship." After saying this, Princess May left, leaving Charlotte wiping her sweat. He was still a little afraid of the eldest princess of Anglima. Not to mention the noble status of the princess, just the strength of the princess at the strong stage of the saint rank was enough to make him feel that he would be abused at any time, every time he was alone with her. Well, wrong. Bah. It couldn't be domestic violence. Charlotte took a long time to catch her breath. Just as she was about to cheer up and return to the banquet, she saw Anne Yan walking over with a smile. When Charlotte saw Anne, she felt relieved and asked, "Respected Princess Anne, why did you leave the center of the banquet?" Anne covered her mouth and whispered, "I'm here to catch a fugitive who has committed a heinous crime. His name is Charlotte Mecklen. Have you seen him?" Charlotte smiled and said, "No, but when I looked in the mirror just now, I saw a face full of admiration for Her Royal Highness. Do you want me to take you to see the mirror?" Anne chuckled, raised her hand, and let Charlotte hold it, and whispered, "Let's dance together." Charlotte bowed slightly. Although he had only practiced martial arts since he came here and had never danced, he believed that his extraordinary physical fitness of the 17th level and the dancing skills he learned during the National Academy and University were still retained. The two danced outside the banquet hall. Soon a court band came quietly to accompany the two young people. It wasn't long before dozens of nobles gathered around, pushing the scene to a very lively place. Some people, even if they leave the center of the banquet, will be actively diverted and surrounded again. Today, no one dares to ignore Charlotte Mecklen, and no one dares to ignore Anne of Brittany. They are the most popular young people in the Fars Empire, the New Breton dynasty. Well, even the Crown Prince Antonio can't steal the attention. Soon, even Antonio walked out of the banquet hall, surrounded by 10 knights of the Brittany family and dozens of young nobles. As the legitimate and almost certain next emperor of the Brittany dynasty, I don't know how many people want to sharpen their heads and get close to the newly promoted Earl of Brittany. Even if you don't mention his identity, Antonio is still the best young man in this empire. Yes, there is no one else. The future strongest man in the empire. If it weren't for the story of Charlotte and Anne, it would be too fairy tale. No one in the Fars Empire could take away Antonio's charm. Antonio looked at his dancing sister, and felt a little emotional. He still remembered that Anne disliked banquets and dancing the most. In his memory, Anne refused to dance with anyone at all the banquets she attended. He thought at that time that his sister didn't like this kind of aristocratic activities. Now he saw that his sister was full of joy when dancing with Charlotte, and finally confirmed that Anne didn't dislike dancing, but she didn't like dancing with people other than Charlotte. When a dance ended, there was a happy applause in the field. Charlotte smiled slightly, took the hand of the first princess of the empire, walked to the crown prince of the Brittany dynasty, and whispered, "Anne is a little tired, please allow me to take Her Royal Highness back to rest." Antonio nodded slightly and said, "It's Count Mecklen." Charlotte took Anne and left. If there was a historian at this time who wanted to record this scene, then Charlotte Mecklen would definitely be commented on. Domineering. What is domineering? This is domineering. Of course, Charlotte did not send Anne back. They slipped out of the palace and went to 221B Baker Street. Anne also carefully instructed the people around her to prepare some cakes, fruits, tea, fruit wine and champagne. Today was a very happy day, and Anne of Brittany wanted to celebrate privately with her husband, Charlotte Mecklen. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432 You Are My Little Princess Forever. The Temple of the Serpent of Fate in Lucavero District. The newly crowned Emperor McLean Breton was standing in front of his wife's grave, with his hands on his knees, whispering something. "Nanny, I'm here to see you. I don't know if you're okay now. I never thought of becoming the Emperor of Fars, but that day, Charlotte knelt in front of me and said she was paying homage to His Majesty the Brittany. And she instigated me to rebel. I collapsed all of a sudden. I want to seek justice for you. If I don't rebel and let Hongmir become the Emperor of Fars, I will never be able to avenge you. If the righteous gods allow it, I am willing to use the throne of Fars in exchange for your return." Today, I saw that boy ask Anne to dance. You should have seen that scene. I saw Anne was glowing. I know Anne is very cute and beautiful. After all, she inherited your beauty. But it's the first time I've seen a girl who can bloom so brilliantly when holding the hand of the man she loves. Even I have to admit that Miss Rose from the Sumriye family is indeed unmatched. Miss Sophia from the Galanid family, who takes the capital of the empire as her title. I don't know how many young people are chasing after her. Not only do they have unparalleled beauty, they also have unparalleled elegance and grace. Today they are also attending my coronation ceremony and the palace banquet I am hosting. In the past, they would all be the center of attention among young people. Neither your father, His Majesty Julius Axel VI, nor I, your Emperor of Brittany, dare say that I can steal the limelight from them. I never thought that my baby Anne could eclipse them just by standing there, without doing anything, become the well-deserved center of attention in everyone's eyes. There is a sentence written in one of that kid's books: vulgar men pursue the best women in the world. Men of noble character will only strive to make their women the best women in the world. When I saw that sentence, I scolded him for talking nonsense. Nanny, you may be like me. You have never thought that there really is such a man, and that someone can actually do it. How could anyone do such a thing? But he really made our baby Anne look like a goddess, dominating the entire ball, and even making beauty the least important charm. Charlotte is indeed a complete bastard, but even I can't find any fault with him. Back then, I should have fought for you and won glory for you back then. After all, you are also my eternal princess. Nanny, I will definitely protect our two children. The old emperor said at the end, tears streaming down his face, sobbing and choking, venting his sorrow in front of his deceased wife. The whole of Strasbourg was reveling all night. It was the first time that Charlotte did not send Anne home. The current 58 6th Avenue was no longer Anne's home. He could only send Anne back to the palace. In a while, Anne will move to the new Duke's mansion. Well, Anne is not only Her Royal Highness the Princess of Fars, but also the Grand Duchess of Moldova. He may also have the Earl's mansion. Maybe when the war is over, he will marry Anne. After sending Anne back, Charlotte did not stay in the palace, and he did not return to 221B Baker Street, but went back to 58 Champs-Élysées. This house has a special meaning to him. It is the first house Charlotte personally owned. There is also Lady Nancy and Lady Plumsauce, his 3 clever cats, and the second-hand carriage he bought. He and Anne had dated here countless times, and they had walked hand in hand on the Champs-Élysées, visited every restaurant, and almost half of the shops. In a sense, 58 Champs-Élysées was the only place in the world that meant home to Charlotte. When he returned to 58 Champs-Élysées, it was already very late. After a while, the sky was slightly bright, and the divine light in the sky quietly dissipated. The miraculous building of the 9 gods returned to its original appearance. Charlotte was about to ask Mrs. Wu Mizijiang to prepare some breakfast when she heard someone knocking on the door. Mrs. Nancy opened the door, and the golden goat hair elf and an unusually strong young man walked in. Charlotte was slightly stunned, and then she heard the young man say, "I'm Ogon." He was slightly surprised and asked, "Why did you come to Strasbourg to find me?" The elephant man Ogon took a deep breath, knelt on one knee on the ground, and said, "Actually, I came to Strasbourg a few days ago. I have been to Cappadocia, and I have also quietly observed what you did in the Red Dragon Strait. I have also had a very in-depth conversation with a black dragon these days. I am convinced that you are the future of the orcs. You can get the orcs out of poverty and the crisis of survival and live a peaceful and harmonious life. So, I, the leader of the elephant tribe, the elephant man Agon, am willing to serve you until the end of my life. Charlotte reached out and helped the elephant man Agon up. She was ecstatic and said, I was afraid that you would never join us. Now that I have you, I have 7 men, the old goat said coldly at the side. 8, have you forgotten that there is also a good boy Gareth Mecklin? Charlotte said hurriedly. Oh, I really forgot about him. Now we have 8 saints. The elephant man Agon suddenly felt a tightness in his heart. If he had been willing to join Charlotte a few months ago, he would have been Charlotte's #1 general now. But now he is the 8th rank general, and even in terms of combat power, Charlotte's subordinates have forced back the king of 10,000 lions Amisfitus and the former Grand Master of the Royal Knights, Cresto, nicknamed the Holy Mountain of Light, and the elephant man Agon cannot be ranked in the top. Facing the elephant man Agon who suddenly came to join him, Charlotte suddenly felt a sense of urgency. He thought to himself, if I don't become a saint, I'm afraid I will become a laughingstock in all the countries on the continent. If life is a novel, I will become a saint in the next volume. Well, at most the next volume. It can't be delayed any longer, otherwise readers will find fault with it, even threaten the author with monthly tickets. Since ancient times, offending readers has never ended well. Charlotte was about to invite the golden goat Rolf and the elephant man Agon to have breakfast together, when the eunuch's voice came from outside the door. Count Mecklin, His Majesty summons you to the palace. Charlotte didn't know why, but she wanted to throw a toad to death. Chapter 433 We forgot to count Vigo. This time, it was a formal visit to His Majesty Emperor Fars, so it had to be done in a serious manner. Charlotte summoned all his men, counted silently, pulled over the golden goat Herolf, and whispered, Why are there 9 saints? The golden goat Herolf took a look and whispered, We forgot to count Vigo. Maybe you think that the 19th level is not a saint. Charlotte hurriedly denied, I'm not, I don't have one. The 19th level is also a saint, the Holy Mountain of Light, Kratos, the top saint of the 23rd level. The old lizardman Black Dragon, the elephant man Agon, the silverback gorilla Chiudelo, the golden goat Herolf, the 2 former vice-captains of the Royal Knights, Asperus, Regulus, and the good boy Gareth Mecklin, a total of 7 strong saints of the 22nd level. Well, Vigo, a 19th level flame paladin, is a bit out of place. No wonder Charlotte missed him when calculating the saints. Vigo was dignified and changed into new dress. He did not expect that he would become the confidant of the new noble of the empire, Count Mecklin, after he surrendered to Charlotte, which was originally a helpless move. Moreover, this lord was the son-in-law of His Majesty the Emperor of Brittany, and had a close relationship with His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Most importantly, Charlotte's fiefdom was South Seraph, and he could still protect the people of South Seraph. Vigo had never been in such a good mood. Charlotte looked at this saint-level subordinate with a guilty conscience and decided to treat him better in the future. In addition to the 9 saint-level subordinates, Charlotte's early team also appeared, and even Dorothy mixed in. She was supposed to be the daughter of the Sume family, which was an old noble in the empire. Anastasia, Dubin, Wang Shang, Belissa, and the fast-handed clerk Italo Calvino, etc., except Cruz who was far away in Cappadocia and could not come back. The rest of the Knights of Favonius had gathered in Strasbourg. Dubin's face was full of excitement at this time. He originally thought that he had no future in the patrol army, but he never thought that he would have a chance to soar to the sky if he followed the right boss. Dubin is now the chief of the patrol army in Lucavero district. His position has soared from the 47th grade 3rd level sergeant to the 35th grade 3rd level sergeant major, jumping 12 levels in one breath. The speed of promotion is unprecedented. Even Charlotte did not have such a black box experience back then. However, in addition to Dubin's sufficient merits, his boss Charlotte is indeed very powerful, and the 35th grade 3rd level sergeant major is still not high, so the bottom level positions are relatively easy to handle. Like Anne, she graduated from college and was the 24th grade, which is an insurmountable class, but even the old Earl can't do anything about it. It was thanks to the Emperor of the Lionheart dynasty who gave her a foreign position that he could take the royal special route and let his daughter become a senior official in the law enforcement department of the General Office of the Central Government. Charlotte led the backbone of the Knights of Favonius to the palace to pay homage to His Majesty the Emperor. After accepting the award, he obtained a new political identity, Director of the Central Government Office. It turned out that although he had intervened in the affairs of the Central Government Office after the rebellion, the old Count of Brittany had not yet ascended the throne, so it was not legitimate. This time, His Majesty Brittany gave him a supplementary identity. At the same time, Anne also became the Minister of the Military Law Enforcement Department. Well, the Central Government Office can change its surname to Mecklen in the future. After accepting the award, Charlotte withdrew from the palace. The day after the new emperor ascended the throne, there were countless things to do, and he would only get in the way if he stayed. Charlotte led all his subordinates back to number 1 Falcon Street. He first signed a few appointments, such as Belissa replaced Dorothy as the chief patrolman of the Lucavero District Patrol Army and partnered with Dubin, such as appointing Anastasia as the director of the Lucavero District Political Affairs Bureau, and Dorothy was changed to the Machupi General Affairs Officer. These identities are just names. In fact, they will go to South Seraph with Charlotte and serve as local officials. They will not stay in Strasbourg to work. The patrol troops in various places were just empty shells, and they will remain the same in the future. Charlotte no longer has so many political identities. Many political identities have been automatically exempted. His current political identities are Director of the General Office of the Central Government, Head of the Knights of Favonius, Special and fully powered War Commissioner of the Fars Empire to the Ingrimmar Empire, Cultural Commissioner of the Fars Empire to the Lionheart Dynasty, fully powered Diplomatic Consul to St. Michael City and Cappadocia City, 5th class Imperial Noble, Count Charlotte Mecklen. Basically, one room can accommodate it. After Charlotte signed a bunch of documents, she asked people to go to nearby restaurants to buy all the food and wine they could buy and held a grand banquet. Although the scale of this banquet could not be compared with a night banquet of the palace, and it was far less impressive than the noble's ball, everyone was still very happy because everyone here was the host, not the guest. They are all members of the Knights of Favonius. Everyone benefits from being in this team. Most of the adventurers who followed Charlotte in the early days bought houses in Strasbourg, and even had houses in other cities. Many of them have accumulated a considerable fortune, and some have even been promoted. Now they can have a very good life with just a weekly salary. Charlotte is never stingy with his subordinates. He may forget occasionally. Charlotte himself didn't go down to party much. He didn't like the hustle and bustle too much. He was in the office, sipping champagne. Charlotte Mecklen is now a person who can drink unlimited champagne. He was thinking about the war that would happen soon, and then he heard someone knocking on the door, and soon Himensha walked in. This female adventurer was one of the first members of the adventure team he met. Charlotte asked, "Aren't you going to go down and have fun with those people?" Himensha smiled and said, "I always thought that you would find an opportunity to kill me." Charlotte smiled and said, "Is it about the silver rhino? Now you don't have to worry about it. No one will remember Archduke Ferdinand anymore." Himensha whispered, "I came to you for 2 things. First, I was promoted to the extraordinary level. Thank you for the supplies you gave me." Charlotte nodded and said, "Congratulations." When Himensha picked up Hokul Silver Rhino, the alchemical pistol that shot and killed Archduke Ferdinand, he did promise to give her a batch of supplies for her promotion to the extraordinary level, and he did not break his promise afterwards. Unexpectedly, this female adventurer was really promoted. Himensha said, "There is one more thing. I am getting married. Dubin proposed to me not long ago, and I agreed to it. I hope you can come to our wedding." Charlotte was very surprised, shook her head, and smiled. "Congratulations to you. I will attend and give gifts." Ordinary people also have their own ordinary lives. Ordinary people also have their own ordinary lives. Not everyone is like the protagonist in the story, with a magnificent life. Chapter 434 Demonic Spear, Regicide. Charlotte sent Himensha away, and couldn't help but take out the Hokul Silver Rhino. This alchemical pistol is really famous in the continent and can be called a demon gun, the Regicide. It killed Archduke Ferdinand and his wife, but it didn't just kill an archduke. It also killed Jonathan, the leader of the South Slav Restoration Army. It killed the usurper Emperor Hongmir. It was also borrowed by Abner Sumai to kill the false queen. Charlotte didn't even know the name of the queen, but being the wife of the royal prince Hongmir Axel, she couldn't be an ordinary woman. Poor thing, she even made a hazelnut cake by herself to celebrate her husband becoming the emperor. That lady is a tragedy. Well, the sister product of this alchemical pistol almost killed Charlotte Mecklen several times. However, for Charlotte, these two silver rhinos can be regarded as his lucky guns. Together with the anti-space long-range rifle obtained from Baron Leo, Charlotte Mecklen had made great contributions and killed countless powerful enemies. Although Charlotte has now changed to the red and blue rattlesnake, these extraordinary guns are still his favorites. Charlotte put away the Firewheel Silver Rhino and took out the anti-space long-range rifle. He promised Himensha that he would give her and Dubin a gift for their wedding, and this extraordinary rifle is a very good gift. Although he also has a super long-range alchemical rifle from Byron, the couple obviously can't afford it. The magic-breaking armor-breaking bullet is too expensive, 1.5 gold EQ per round, and only this extraordinary rifle is suitable. Charlotte took a piece of cloth and carefully wiped the extraordinary rifle clean, and even disassembled some parts and re-oiled it. He hesitated for a moment and sent someone to buy a long gift box and 2 boxes of magic-breaking armor-breaking bullets. Charlotte mainly fought alone. Although she killed many enemies, the box of 120 rounds of armor-piercing bullets that Sister Karen gave her has not been used up yet. One of the 2 boxes of armor-piercing bullets was given to the Dupins as a gift, and the other was used by herself to replenish the ammunition reserve. Although this thing is quite expensive, Charlotte is quite rich and doesn't care much about a few hundred EQ. Charlotte prepared the gifts and planned to wait for Dupin to get married and send them to him together with Anne. It was getting more and more lively outside. Obviously, this banquet might last all night. Charlotte waited for a while, and a new carriage entered number 1 Falcon Street. It was Anne who had just left the palace. Charlotte hurried to greet her. The two greeted most people and left the Lucavero District Patrol Army office. When Charlotte left the gate, she looked across from the carriage. Opposite was number 2 Falcon Street, which was originally his office. It was the Lucavero District Government Bureau. But Charlotte knew that she would not come to these 2 places again. His appearance in these 2 places could no longer be called work, but inspection. Seeing that Anne was in a good mood, Charlotte asked, "Where are we going today?" Anne smiled and said, "To my Duke's palace." Charlotte smiled and said, "Very good, I haven't been to your mansion yet." Both of them were very relaxed and very happy. Their world has been different since yesterday. The Duke's palace of Prince Redmire is also in the Val d'Oise district, but it is on the 2nd Avenue. The capital of Fars is Strasbourg, and the center of Strasbourg is the Val d'Oise district. But if we talk about the center of the Val d'Oise district, it is the 9 most central avenues. The Breton family's mansion is on the 6th Avenue, which is already very luxurious, but Prince Redmire is even better. He lives at number 3 2nd Avenue. Well, there is only one house number on 1st Avenue, and that is the palace. This mansion has been slightly renovated, but Anne is also of Axel's blood, so all the Axel family emblems and logos were not removed. Only the silver snake patterns of the Brittany family were added in many key and conspicuous places. All the people in the original Redmire prince's mansion were cleared out, and no one was left. They were all replaced by people from the Brittany family, from the housekeeper, Mammy Karen, to the guards of the mansion, to the servants. Almost all of them were familiar faces that Anne had seen since she was a child. Charlotte seemed much more relaxed in Anne's Duke of Brittany's mansion than in the Earl of Brittany's mansion and the palace. He smiled slightly and kept saying some gentle words to Anne, and Anne was also introducing him to this new mansion. Because the two had not yet married, Anne also specially reserved a place for Charlotte to live in the mansion, and all the furnishings were arranged by Anne. Charlotte accompanied Anne to walk around the Duke's mansion and couldn't help but admire that the architectural craftsmanship of this world was indeed extraordinary. This Duke's mansion was almost as good as those famous palaces in Europe on Earth, but it was far inferior to Earth in the display of artworks. There was no way, after all, this was a world with extraordinary things. Even the nobles would pay more attention to those extraordinary things rather than artworks with no practical value. Even if there were some items related to art, they would inevitably have extraordinary properties. Anne saw that Charlotte seemed very happy, so she said to him, "The mansion next door originally belonged to another prince, and he has announced his opposition to my father's accession to the throne. I will persuade my father to give that house to me, and I will have people flatten a few walls, so that our mansions will be connected together." Charlotte nodded slightly. He didn't care about the mansion. For a traverser like him from Earth, he was used to living in a small house of dozens of square meters, at most hundreds of square meters. His obsession with houses was at most the size of number 58, Chrysler Avenue. He didn't have much desire to live in such a palace-like mansion. The two chatted for a while, and suddenly someone came to report that the Count of Brittany was visiting. Charlotte hesitated for a moment before she realized that the current Count of Brittany was Antonio. Anne happily took Charlotte to greet Antonio. Antonio strode in, saw the two of them, and complained, "Annie, why are you moving in such a hurry? I haven't prepared many things yet. I will send people to deliver them in the next few days." Anne smiled and said, "This is the prince's mansion. There is nothing missing. You just need to deliver my daily necessities." Antonio saw Charlotte and had a lot to say. He said to Charlotte, "We will set off in 3 days at most. But this time you will lead the troops independently, starting from the Earl of Mecklen and attacking the heart of the Black Phoenix. I will accompany my father to attack the Black Phoenix from the front battlefield." Chapter 435. The troops are as fast as a plunder and the attack is as fierce as fire. Charlotte took a deep breath and said, "I will definitely be able to defeat all enemies in front of me." Charlotte now has 9 saints under her command, and not all of them are saints who have just passed the 19th level like Vigo. 7 of them are strong saints, all of whom have experienced hundreds of battles and have outstanding combat power. Well, as long as he doesn't run into Viscount Constantine, Charlotte Mecklen, is invincible. However, Viscount Constantine has already defected to Baron, so he is unlikely to run into him. Antonio didn't stay in the Duke's mansion for a long time. After he left, there was an endless stream of convoys, delivering Anne's various supplies. Charlotte always thought Anne was very simple until he saw this convoy with his own eyes, and the things carried down from the convoy. This convoy actually only had 30 carriages, but it was divided into 3 groups, each with 10 carriages. This group of 10 carriages was delivered to the Duke's mansion. After unloading the goods, the second group of carriages arrived. After the second group of carriages unloaded the goods, the third group arrived again. Then the first group of carriages appeared again. Charlotte finally understood what luxury meant. What was nobility? Miss Anne de Brittany was just plain in front of him. Well, now she is Her Royal Highness Princess Anne de Brittany. Charlotte did not expect that Japan and Hermans acted very quickly. Not long after she left, they announced that they would get married the next day and invited all colleagues to attend. When Charlotte received the wedding invitation early the next morning, he was quite stunned. He had never seen such an urgent wedding. The wedding was held on the same day as the wedding invitation was sent out. He brought Anne to the wedding as agreed, and the gifts he prepared made the two newlyweds very happy. With Charlotte and Anne attending, the 9 holy orders under his command would naturally attend. Even Antonio learned the news and brought a few holy knights. Because of Charlotte's relationship, Claire Brittany and Abner Sumai not only came in person, but also prepared gifts. Charlotte also did not forget to send someone to invite Detective Winnie Arsino and her ex-fiancée Sylvie Martin. Frederica was not in Strasbourg. She was busy moving the leopard tribe, and even Charlotte could not see her. With the Crown Prince Antonio, the Grand Duchess of Moldova, Princess Anne, and the newly promoted Count of Mecklen attending the wedding, the entire Strasbourg aristocratic circle was moved. Fortunately, Japan knew that his house was not big enough to entertain so many guests, so he borrowed number 1 Falcon Street to hold the wedding, but later, even number 2 Falcon Street opposite was filled with people coming to celebrate. Charlotte originally wanted to be the witness for Japan, but since Antonio was here, was there anyone in Fars who was more prestigious than His Royal Highness the Crown Prince to preside over the wedding? That was with His Majesty of Brittany. That was a grand scene that could only be held at Charlotte and Anne's wedding. It was enough for Japan to have His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Originally, Dubin just wanted to hold an ordinary wedding, but this wedding not only had the Crown Prince and the Imperial Princess, but also allowed His Royal Highness the Crown Prince to preside over the wedding himself. It couldn't be more perfect. Dubin smiled from ear to ear throughout the wedding, and the gifts he received filled the warehouse of the Patrol City Army office. Charlotte, Anne, and Antonio didn't stay for long, and they left soon. But after they left, the wedding became more and more lively. Himengsha held Dubin's hand, feeling very emotional. She was originally an ordinary adventurer, with no prospects, no future. Even if she could save a little money, she didn't know how to start a family in the future. After all, adventurers have unstable incomes and are quite dangerous. But suddenly, because of an encounter, she was abducted by a man who looked unreliable to adventure and explore Machu Picchu, and several companions died. Mengsha really thought that the liar she met was deeply suspicious of Charlotte. Even though Charlotte later got everyone to the patrol city army and had a formal identity as an imperial civil servant, she was always very afraid of this mysterious man. What happened later was beyond Mengsha's imagination. She watched Charlotte soar into the sky. In a short period of time, she became a high-level extraordinary person, a new noble in the empire, with more and more sophisticated means and more powerful forces. She even had saints as her subordinates. But all this has nothing to do with this female adventurer. She has made a decision to stay in Strasbourg to work after marriage and not go out to take risks. Mengsha is also very satisfied with her husband Dubin. Dubin is now a second-level extraordinary person. His position is not low, and he is also the commander-in-chief of the patrol army of a large region. It is enough for her to take care of her husband and children and live a stable life. She herself is also extraordinary. For ordinary people, Dubin and Mengsha are already a very happy family, and they even have a little feeling of being on the rise. After attending the wedding of his two subordinates, in the next few days, Charlotte reorganized his Knights of Favonius. He transferred the veterans who were unwilling to return to the battlefield to the patrol army and the government affairs bureau, and prepared to take all the others back to the South Serif. Well, there will be no South Serif in the future. This land will be renamed the Count of Mechlin, the official name from the Fars Empire. Charlotte's future will be rooted in his own earldom. He will work hard to make everyone in the Count of Mechlin live a prosperous life, and most civilians live a stable life, and try to ensure fairness and peace in this territory. As Antonio revealed in advance, on the 5th day of the accession of the Emperor of Brittany, he issued a notice that shocked the continent. It announced an alliance with Ingrima, Byron, and the Lionheart dynasty to fight against the treacherous Black Phoenix dynasty. And he listed dozens of major crimes of the Black Phoenix dynasty, and established legal justice for this alliance and crusade. Charlotte also received the official document. He said goodbye to Anne again, took his subordinates, left Strasbourg, and after a period of marching, returned to the earldom of Mechlin. Because of the war and the constant instigation of people like Charlotte, most of the original ladies of South Syria have moved to Behemoth, Cappadocia and other regions. Although these ladies of South Syria lost their land and part of their wealth, they have gained peace and escaped from the war. Today, the dukedom of Mechlin is full of orcs. Charlotte brought hundreds of thousands of orcs from the Red Dragon area and arranged a place for them to live. Charlotte believes that as time goes by, the ladies of South Syria who originally left will choose to return. At that time, he will properly settle them and let the residents of different origins completely integrate together. As long as it can be fair and no one is allowed to enjoy privileges, there will be no residents who cannot be integrated. Of course, Charlotte has no time to manage his own earldom now. He now needs to follow the royal knights of the Emperor of Fars to attack the Black Phoenix dynasty. Charlotte returned to her territory and immediately launched a surprise attack. Chloe, who had been fighting with him for a long time and had fought countless tacit wars, was imprisoned in less than half a day. When he was caught by Charlotte and interrogated on the spot, he asked indignantly, "Charlotte, is it fun for you to do this? You find a few saints to attack, even if you beat me? Who in the world can accept it?" Charlotte couldn't help laughing and said, "You should also know about the Four-Nation Alliance." Chloe looked gloomy and said, "I know, the Emperor of Brittany is really a powerful character, he just took over the Four-Nation Alliance. The Black Phoenix did nothing wrong, why did it end like this?" Chloe was very sad. Although he never hoped, he felt that the Black Phoenix dynasty might disappear from the long river of history of the old continent. Charlotte comforted him, "Weakness is the original sin. If our Fars was also weak, perhaps the four empires would have formed an alliance to attack Fars, then maybe we would have switched places, and you would have been so arrogant and scolded me. I hope you can surrender, don't make unnecessary sacrifices, each of your subordinates is a living life, don't die for this kind of war." Chloe whispered, "Your heresy is not worth refuting, every Black Phoenix person was born to die for the Empire." Charlotte had a lot of arguments to say, but could only sigh and say, "I won't make things difficult for you." He imprisoned Chloe, recruited most of Chloe's subordinates to surrender, and sent the remaining people who were unwilling to surrender to Cappadocia. After defeating Chloe in one battle, Charlotte did not stop. He stayed in his earldom for only a few days before leading the Knights of Favonius into the territory of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Relying on the 9 saints under his command, Charlotte's soldiers moved as fast as a plunder and attacked like fire. In just over a month, He captured 28 Black Phoenix cities. Most of these cities were not guarded by saints, and the few cities that were guarded by saints could not resist Charlotte's lack of martial ethics, so he ordered his 9 saints to fight together and start a group fight. You know, even in the battlefield of Furlanden, although the 2 empires invested dozens of saints, there were very few battles where more than 10 saints appeared. The 9 saints joined forces and were truly invincible. In the group fight, 4 saints were successively imprisoned. At this time, the coalition forces of the 4 empires had not yet reached the front line. The reason why Charlotte was so brave was because His Majesty the Emperor of Brittany promised that the Black Phoenix land divided this time would be incorporated into his earldom. Now every time he fights, he is grabbing land for himself. How can he not be excited? The royal family and nobles of the Black Phoenix dynasty were arguing at this time. They argued endlessly about whether to go to war or seek peace, and some people even fought each other. Chapter 436, A New Direction of War. In front of Charlotte was a map. He was holding a military meeting at this time, and the backbone of the Knights of Favonius were all present. Although this map was a map of the entire Old World, other places were blank, and only the territory of the Black Phoenix was densely marked. Charlotte was a little worried now. How should he fight next? He had invaded the territory of the Black Phoenix dynasty last time, and he had also inquired about the distribution of the noble territories, autonomous territories, and directly governed regions of the Black Phoenix in advance. So after the war started, he specifically picked the weak persimmons and captured 28 cities. The land occupied was more than twice that of the earldom of Mecklen. But next, no matter which place he attacked, it would attract the rescue of noble territories in other places. Every battle might be a tough battle. This was not Charlotte's fighting style. He was patiently waiting for the army of the 4 Nations Alliance to launch an attack, or to eat a few more bites first, weighing the pros and cons, and hesitating. The area of the Black Phoenix dynasty is more than 4 times that of Fars, but most of the territory is worthless desert. The core territory has only 12 directly administered counties close to the sea. The area of these 12 directly administered counties is only 1/20th of the territory of the Black Phoenix dynasty, but they account for more than 70% of the population and have the most developed economy. In addition to the directly administered counties, the Black Phoenix dynasty also has 1,106 noble territories and 58 autonomous territories, and no overseas territories or overseas vassal states. The Black Phoenix dynasty was established earlier than Fars and Ingrima. When other countries were scrambling for overseas territories and overseas vassal states, it had not yet completed its rise. By the time the Black Phoenix dynasty unified into a great empire, the age of exploration had already ended. The Black Dragon coughed lightly and said, "We have occupied 1.5 directly administered counties and 12 noble territories of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Next, I think it is not appropriate to launch another attack, and we should firmly defend the territory we have conquered." The words of the old lizard man aroused the approval of most people. Although Charlotte had fought hard to recruit more than 10,000 local troops of the Black Phoenix dynasty after entering the Black Phoenix dynasty, he still did not have enough manpower and was stretched to the limit despite occupying such a large territory. Many areas could not even send garrisons, so they could only allow the local areas to continue self-government. Charlotte shook his head. The Emperor of Brittany had promised that the divided Black Phoenix dynasty land would belong to him and would be incorporated into the earldom of Mecklen. He felt like he was committing a sin if he stopped at this moment. Charlotte could not give away the fertile land. Even the infertile land could not be given to Ingrima, Byron and the Lionheart dynasty for nothing. He was undecided about the direction of the next attack, but he was clearly opposed to stopping the attack. Charlotte shook his head and said, "I must occupy more land. Especially the 12 directly governed counties of the Black Phoenix dynasty are all fertile land." Charlotte clenched her fists and almost wanted to hit me all on the public screen. He asked again, "Are the 4 Black Phoenix saints not going to surrender yet?" The eldest son Gareth Mecklen said, "Father, they are not going to surrender yet. I think we should kill one to serve as a warning to others." Charlotte also thought that if one was killed, there might be 3 left, and they would not insist so much. But she still rejected this inhumane suggestion and said, "Stay for now." Gareth was really not young. Even if he was not 60, he was almost a few years old. When he called father, almost every saint covered his mouth fiercely, for fear of making any noise that should not be made. They really couldn't help it. Seeing that there was no way to continue the meeting, Charlotte could only sigh and say, That's it for today. The military meeting was over, and everyone left in twos and threes, but Gareth stayed. He waited until only Charlotte and he were left in the room, and whispered, "Father, I have a plan." Sometimes, when Charlotte heard her eldest son Gareth calling her father, she couldn't help but want to laugh, but she really had to hold it back, because he was a loving father. How could he laugh at his only son? Charlotte held back again and again, suppressed her strong smile, and then said, "Speak." He didn't dare to say a few more words, for fear of breaking the spell. Gareth pointed to the map and said, "The most valuable land of the Black Phoenix dynasty is the 12 directly governed counties, but the power of the Black Phoenix dynasty is also concentrated here. Although we are powerful, it is impossible for us to swallow them all, but Thessis is an exception." Charlotte glanced at the map of the Black Phoenix dynasty, and her expression also moved slightly. Thessis is an autonomous region, guarding the Black Dragon Strait. The Black Dragon Strait connects the Sea of Giant Whales and the Raging Sea. After crossing the Black Dragon Strait, you will reach the northern territory of the Black Phoenix dynasty. In fact, the Misu family of Fars is not a native noble family of Fars. The Misu family comes from the North Territory, so the family's fleet is called the Northern Fleet. The Misu family is said to have held a big secret for generations, and this secret is closely related to the Raging Sea. Therefore, Grand Duchess Misu took great risks to explore the Raging Sea, which also reduced the strength of the Northern Fleet. If the Misu family's Northern Fleet had not explored the Raging Sea, it would have maintained its peak combat power. In the Old Continent, only the Royal Navy of Ingrima can compete with the Navy of Fars. The Navy of Byron and the Black Phoenix dynasty is simply vulnerable. But the changes in the world have never been diverted by human thoughts. In order to explore the Raging Sea, Grand Duchess Misu lost the strength of her family fleet. In the naval battle with Byron and the Black Phoenix dynasty, her strength was further weakened. She had to steal the Fontainebleau and surrender to Byron. Although she retained her strength, her reputation was damaged. This surrender was enough to make the Misu family unable to recover for decades. The North is the most mysterious land in the Old Continent. Although you only need to cross the Black Dragon Strait to set foot in the North, and the Black Phoenix dynasty has also developed dozens of free territories in the North. And hundreds of nobles have opened up territories in the North is still mysterious and unpredictable to humans. Gareth asked Charlotte to occupy Thessa, which was equivalent to controlling the connection between the North and the Old Continent, which just met Charlotte Mecklenburg's request to swallow more land. Although, controlling Thessa does not mean that you can control the North, but it can be digested slowly. Charlotte carefully looked at the map several times and was very moved by Gareth's proposal. She decided to hold a military meeting the next day to discuss how to capture Thessa. Charlotte patted Gareth on the shoulder and encouraged him. Then she changed the topic and asked about his recent practice. Gareth said distressedly, "I obviously have a lot of power, but I just can't use it. I don't know what's wrong. Every time I use the power in my body, I feel dangerous and I will be blown to pieces by this power." Charlotte nodded to show that she understood. Gareth's current situation is that his soul is broken. Although the soul, no matter how broken, will grow back together as long as it is not hurt, the soul that grows back together is not the original one. For example, you broke a piece of soil and then kneaded it together again. Although it is still the same piece of soil, it is really not the same piece of soil. Every grain of sand that makes up this piece of soil has changed its position. Although Gareth still has the power of the 22nd stage strong stage of the holy stage, he does not have the spirituality and wisdom to control this power, and he also lacks the understanding of the family secret method. A saint, even the lowest level 19, can split the sky and the sea, and is omnipotent. This powerful force, if not controlled by sufficient spirituality, wisdom and secret methods, is indeed enough to blow the owner to pieces. Charlotte certainly did not know the family secrets of Mossard and Gareth. After learning about Gareth's situation, he immediately planted the blood butcher seed in his eldest son and encouraged him to practice the beast god transfiguration beforehand. After Gareth complained, he was slightly happy again and said, "I have been practicing the blood butcher secret method you taught me. In the past 2 days, my power seed has been broken and I have awakened the blood butchering fighting key, and I can also transform into Channing Hayato. I'm about to awaken my bloodthirsty fighting spirit. I just don't understand why I have to practice 2 powers at the same time. If I only chose to practice one, I might have reached the 2nd level of the extraordinary now." Charlotte smiled slightly and said, You should focus your main energy on the Blood Butcher. I let you practice the Beast God transformation technique just because I hope you can escape quickly when you encounter danger. After all, Channing Hayato has wings. The last time you were injured in the battle, I was worried about you for a long time. I don't want you to be in danger again. Gareth immediately felt a meticulous care of his father and whispered, "Thank you for your concern, father." Charlotte comforted him lovingly, which deepened Gareth's feelings for his father. The power of the Blood Butcher was very overbearing, and it had begun to devour the power in Gareth's body. If Gareth could successfully cultivate the Blood Butcher, Charlotte would have an extra saint-level guard. He even felt that Gareth could activate the Blood Boundary alone. If there was such a blood servant who was proficient in the Blood Boundary, there would be no need to fear various dangers. After all, the Blood Boundary could even withstand the Devil-Breaking Armor Bomb, and the Blood Boundary activated by the Saint level would be dozens of times more powerful. As for letting Gareth cultivate the Channing Falcon, it was completely Charlotte's own preference. He also recently learned that the orcs also had a large category of birds, among which the Channing Falcon was the fastest flying one. Charlotte tried to cultivate the third beast transformation herself, and just happened to let Gareth cultivate it as a reference. After Charlotte asked Gareth to rest, she looked at the map of the Black Phoenix dynasty, and her mood was surging, and she couldn't calm down for a long time. The words of the Brittany Emperor that he would give him the divided Black Phoenix land were too attractive. Chapter 437 Black Phoenix's Acquaintance. Charlotte opened her eyes, and countless feathers appeared on her body. A pair of wings grew on her back. Her body became thinner, and her eyes became deeper, dark and bright. This is Channing Hayato. Charlotte could sense that a bloodthirsty fighting spirit in her body had undergone a new change. When an orc turns into a human, the power in his body will be sealed. When a human turns into an orc, the power in his body will also be sealed. However, when an orc turns into an orc of another tribe, the bloodthirsty fighting spirit will not be sealed, but will only be transferred to the attributes of other tribes. When he turned into a crossback red bear warrior, he had an additional superpower in his body, bear power. When he turned into a silverback gorilla, the superpower in his body became King Kong. When he turned into Channing Hayato, the superpower awakened in his body was Hawkeye. Blue Rattlesnake can have 8 attributes: amplified speed, light agility x7, devouring life, super long range, anti-space, Hawkeye, bear power, hot blood, and sleeplessness. Charlotte often uses Hawkeye, but he does not have this ability himself, and relies entirely on this extraordinary weapon. Hawkeye is an auxiliary ability, which is a dream come true for extraordinary people who are good at shooting bows and arrows, throwing knives, throwing spears and other skills. Charlotte recently chose the third Beast God transformation technique because he was worried that when using the Blood Spirit Rhinoceros to fly, what if the blood energy is insufficient, or other situations occur, and he falls from the sky? So he thought of such a remedy. Channing Hayato is born with the ability to fly, and is also a natural hunter. Charlotte sensed the bloodthirsty fighting spirit in his body, and felt more and more that the bloodthirsty fighting spirit contained countless mysteries. The human cultivation system comes from all kinds of sources, some from the 9 righteous gods, some from the great philosophers of the human race, some from evil gods, or various inexplicable sources. The energy cultivated by various secret methods is not compatible with each other. Knights cannot use spells, mages are not good at melee, and even some extraordinary paths are not suitable for fighting at all, such as dreamwalkers and extreme soarers. When Charlotte transformed into an orc, she could not use bloody glory. When Domitian transformed into a human, he also needed to practice the secret human method. The bloodthirsty fighting spirit of the orcs all came from the dragon god. The bloodthirsty fighting spirit cultivated by orcs from different tribes all came from the same source, but the results of cultivation were very different. The bloodthirsty fighting spirit of the lion people and the bear people was completely different. The fighting spirit of the leopard people and the elephant people was also different. The supernatural powers they produced were even more varied. Even the orcs of the same tribe were different in different tribes. The red bears with overbacks were easy to awaken the bear power, while the yellow bears with grinding mountains were easy to awaken the iron bones and bronze skin. Charlotte experienced it a little bit, and the feeling of transforming into a Channing Falcon, and then he returned to his human body. For him, the Beast God transformation was a very useful skill, but he didn't have to work hard. He had just practiced a Beast God transformation. The bloodthirsty fighting spirit of the orcs all had violent attributes, which made him a little excited. He couldn't sleep very well, so he stood in front of the map again. He stared at Thessa for a long time, clapped his palms lightly, and said to himself, "It's decided, let's attack Thessa." However, from Charlotte's occupied area to Thessa, it is necessary to pass through 4 noble territories. These 4 noble territories are not the territories of small nobles. There are 2 earldoms, 1 viscountdom, and 1 barondom. Their knights have been ready for battle and have formed a coalition. Although Charlotte is confident that he can defeat them, it will inevitably cost a certain price. For Charlotte, he does not want to pay any price. How can we divide these 4 nobles and make their coalition collapse? Although I know a lot of strategies, they are all just stories. If I really want to implement them, there may be many loopholes. Charlotte is thinking about how to make a battle plan. He knows that he is not a military strategist, not even a keyboard military strategist, so when leading troops to fight, he emphasizes the word cowardly, and specializes in fighting against the weak and afraid of the strong. For example, when facing Chloe, he chose to let several saints beat him up. Chloe scolded him at that time, "Charlotte, is it fun for you to do this? Even if you find a few saints to attack me, who in the world can accept it?" Charlotte could only talk about other things and couldn't answer directly. If Charlotte took action herself and captured Chloe in front of the 2 armies, she would be a hero. He didn't take action himself, but let his saints take Chloe down, which could barely be considered a military commander. He let several saints besiege a mere ordinary extraordinary person. Is this still a human thing to do? Chloe was really unconvinced. He questioned Charlotte more than once afterwards. "What do you mean by finding several saints to beat me up?" This little thing can also highlight Charlotte's fighting style. He loves his subordinates very much, and would rather pay a little more price to reduce the losses as much as possible. This is also one of the reasons why he can always increase the number of soldiers, and the more soldiers he has, the more he fights. He is unwilling to use human lives to accumulate victory, and prefers to use numbers to accumulate victory. Charlotte also knows that this tactic has great flaws, such as too much logistical pressure, which is easy to miss the opportunity to fight, but he just hopes to have fewer deaths. Suddenly someone reported, "Count Mecklen, there is a person who claims to be your old acquaintance who came to visit." Charlotte thought to herself, "I don't have many old acquaintances in Black Phoenix." He hurriedly asked someone to wake up the old goat, wanting to meet this guest of Black Phoenix. What surprised Charlotte was that the other party was actually an old acquaintance. The person who came to visit was Andreas, the youngest saint of Black Phoenix, the son of Viscount Constantine, the strongest of Black Phoenix. Andreas no longer had the high spirits when they first met, and his face was tired. When he saw Charlotte, he just greeted her lightly, and there was no desire to fight. Charlotte hurriedly asked someone to serve Andreas hot flour tea in a bowl of hot noodles. There was no such food as noodles in Fars, and Charlotte occasionally missed her hometown, so she made a small invention. Noodles are almost no technical content, but this way of eating has not been invented in the old world. Charlotte was afraid that Andreas would not be able to use chopsticks, so in order to avoid him making a fool of himself, she also thoughtfully provided a fork. Andreas was not polite, and ate a few mouthfuls of noodles. Although he was in a bad mood, he also showed a little appreciation and said, "Do you know about my father and the Count of Brittany?" Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "It's His Majesty the Breton. I didn't think that one day I would fight side by side with you." Andreas snorted coldly, rolled up the noodles with a fork, and ate them in big mouthfuls, but suddenly big tears rolled down his handsome face, falling into the bowl of noodles, adding a bitter flavor. Charlotte could understand Andreas's feelings, but she had nothing to say and dared not persuade him. This is what a certain Western politician said: "There is no friendship between countries, only interests. Countries that believe in friendship and promises have perished or are perishing." Chapter 438, Julius Axel is also the father-in-law of McLean in Brittany. Andreas finished a bowl of noodles and wiped his mouth before saying, "My father wants to go to Byron, but I don't want to go. I don't want to be a vampire either." Charlotte was overjoyed and shouted, "Andrea, come to me, I will treat you as a brother." The golden goat Rolf glanced at Andreas and thought to himself, not long ago, someone was treated as his son by him. "If you want, you can change your surname to Mecklen, Brittany, or Axel. I know you want to draw a clear line with the past. I also have the secret of the Orc Assassin League, the Beast Scout transformation technique. You can even show yourself as an orc." Andreas suddenly had an urge to slap Charlotte. Charlotte arranged things in too much detail, but that's what made her even more annoying. He whispered, "I didn't say I wanted to join you," Charlotte said quickly. "How can you say such a thing?" "I'll say it for you, Sir Andreas. I hereby sincerely invite you to join the Mecklen family and the Knights of Favonius. Let us build a great cause together." Andreas couldn't help but say, "Charlotte, why do you look like you want to rebel? Brittany is your father-in-law." The Golden Goat Herolf interjected lightly. "Julius Axel is also McLean Brittany's father-in-law." The old goat silenced Charlotte and Andreas. Charlotte was silent for a while and said, "Go out." The Golden Goat Herolf was secretly happy and strode out of the room. Then he heard Charlotte shouting again, "Come back." He walked back in voluntarily. Charlotte did not look at the Golden Goat Herolf again, and said eagerly, "If Sir Andreas is willing to surrender, I can appoint the Golden Goat Herolf as your adjutant." The old goat did not expect that Charlotte's retaliation would come so quickly. He did not dare to say anything this time. Andreas was silent for a long time, and then said, "I have never thought about changing my last name." Charlotte held his hands and said, "Then I will listen to you and not change it." Andreas was extremely depressed during this period. He really had a kind of resentment that was so great that there was nowhere to go. But after staying with Charlotte for a while, he had a doubt that is deceived by a scumbag. He was indeed not so depressed. Andreas is known as the youngest saint in Black Phoenix. In fact, he has only been promoted to saint for a few years. He is only at the 19th level like Vigo. However, he is much younger than Vigo and has much more potential than Vigo. In addition, his father is Constantine. He may become a top powerhouse on the continent like Antonio in the future. Charlotte, this is also a pre-investment. Anyway, even if Andreas is unable to recover from this, he is still a standard saint. It is not a big loss to be respectful to the wise. Andreas was silent for a long time and whispered, "I won't take part in the battle with the Black Phoenix." Charlotte patted his shoulder affectionately and said, "It's okay, I will never make things difficult for you." The Black Phoenixes. Charlotte hesitated and took back the words of comfort she was about to say. After all, no matter how tactful it was, this kind of comfort was not human. He changed the subject slightly and said, "From now on, you will be responsible for persuading them to surrender, and help me take care of the prisoners. After all, I'm not a Black Phoenix person, and I may not be able to take good care of the details and customs." Andreas' greatest use is definitely not to go to the battlefield, and Charlotte has no shortage of a 19th level saint under his command. He immediately found a higher value job for the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix and asked him to persuade the 4 captured saints to surrender. If Andreas can really do this job well, it will be much better than going to the battlefield. Andreas didn't know that Charlotte would set a trap for him like this. When he heard that it was to persuade Andreas to surrender and take care of the captured compatriots, he readily agreed. This job sounded more humane. Charlotte was really considerate. She immediately arranged a few servants for Andreas and arranged a place for him to stay and take a shower and change clothes. Although this young man from a top noble family could endure hardships, he was really not used to it. Well, the key point is that he must change into the Far's military uniform as soon as possible. After Andreas left, the sky was slightly bright. Charlotte sent someone to gather his men again and started another military meeting. The topic of this military meeting was very clear: how to take down Thessa? Because of Andreas, Charlotte's thinking was much broader. He proposed to send a letter of persuasion to the 4 nobles who blocked the road first, and this suggestion was unanimously approved. Charlotte wrote the letter herself, and the beginning was, "Constantine and Andreas, father and son, are already in a certain camp. The Black Phoenix will surely be defeated. Why don't you find a way to survive early?" After the letter was written, Charlotte sent people to deliver it to the 4 Black Phoenix nobles. The territories of the 4 nobles were quite far away, and the messenger could not go back and forth in a short time. So Charlotte didn't wait for the reply, but finally waited for the news that the 4 countries had united to attack the Black Phoenix. He received the news 2 days late. At this time, the coalition forces of the 4 countries had been divided into more than 20 routes, led by the top nobles of each country, and attacked the Black Phoenix together. How could the army loyal to the Black Phoenix withstand such a swift offensive? Although they fought hard, they were in a state of being stretched to the limit. They only resisted a few major armies, and the rest had no troops to meet the enemy, allowing the noble knights of various countries to wreak havoc in the Black Phoenix territory. 5 or 6 days later, the 4 nobles reacted differently. The Baron killed Charlotte's messenger and vowed to fight him to the end, but the other three nobles said they could surrender and put forward several conditions. Charlotte's patience was running out at this time. He needed to seize more land. After all, what could be seized would definitely belong to the earldom of Mecklen in the future. Charlotte never expected the land seized by others. Charlotte quickly issued a war threat, requiring the three nobles to surrender unconditionally and attack the Baron who refused to surrender with him. He could guarantee that the three nobles would have the same status in the Fars Empire, and gave a 3-day deadline, saying that after the time, the entire clan would be slaughtered without leaving a single survivor. Charlotte's threat was actually just a gesture. He really had never done any massacres. After all, such a thing was too inhumane and a time traveler could not do it at all. But he didn't know that his reputation in Black Phoenix was not very good, because he sent all opponents to Cappadocia, which made many Black Phoenix people feel that those who opposed surrender would disappear, and no one would see them alive or dead. It is said that some of them were eaten as military rations by Charlotte's orc army. The three Black Phoenix nobles who received the threat of war were trembling with fear and panic. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439, Charlotte is just a writer who became famous through literature. The four nobles standing between Charlotte and Thessa also held a military meeting. At the meeting, Baron Exon spoke passionately, pointing out that Charlotte had 10 defeats and the four noble coalitions had 10 victories. Viscount Constantine is a hero of my Black Phoenix, and there is no way he would defect to the Fars people. He is lying, slandering, and disrupting our determination to resist. Although Charlotte is famous, he is just a writer who became famous through literature. I heard that he was just a civil servant in Fars who handled documents. He was able to have his current status because he pursued Princess Anne. His achievements are all fake. Can you believe that a person can write, race a chariot, choreograph an opera, and fight in battle? It's ridiculous, very ridiculous. Fars, Ingrima, Byron and the Lionheart dynasty all have their own evil intentions. It is impossible for them to work together. They have come from afar and will definitely not last long, my two lords. Can you believe such absurd rumors? At this time, a clerk rushed in and handed a document to his master, Earl Nebenholm. The Earl took a look and handed the document to Earl Barnett next to him calmly. The Earl looked at the document and was surprised, but he crushed the document directly and did not pass it to Viscount Angeloy. Baron Exon was about to ask, and another clerk came in. This time he gave the document to Earl Barnett. Earl Barnett took a look and handed it to Viscount Angeloy. After the Viscount read it, his face changed, very complicated, and his expression was gloomy. After a while, two clerks came in one after another, each handling the documents they brought to their masters. Baron Exon saw the short first line of words on the document, Viscount Constantine has committed treason. The Baron's eyes went dark, and then he was afraid. The documents Charlotte had given to the three nobles had just been shown to him by Earl Nebenholm, Earl Barnett, and Viscount Angeloy in order to show their determination and open-mindedness. The documents blatantly encouraged the three to arrest the only opponent as a criterion for surrendering to Fars. He looked at the three nobles, panicked, and suddenly shouted, "Swear allegiance to Earl Mecklen, Earl Nebenholm, Earl Barnett, Viscount Angeloy. Let's discuss what kind of ceremony to use to welcome Earl Mecklen to inspect his loyal Thessa." Earl Nebenholm smiled slightly and said, "As Baron Exon wishes." Earl Barnett and Viscount Angeloy also said at the same time, "Baron Exon has a point." Baron Exon wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He was really afraid that if he was slow to react, he would be attacked by these three people, and then his head would be chopped off and given to Charlotte as a gift. He now regretted killing Charlotte's messenger. Baron Exon really didn't expect that Constantine and his son would surrender. Charlotte didn't expect that her threat would be so useful. This time, not only the original three nobles, but even the Baron who killed his messenger, expressed their willingness to surrender, and even took the initiative to express their willingness to be a retainer of the Mecklen family. The major countries in the Old World are different from modern countries on Earth. Each country is composed of a part of the Emperor's direct counties and noble territories. Noble territories are the private property of the nobles in name or in reality. They only need to pay taxes to the royal family and assume some obligations, but the royal family cannot deprive them of their land in any name. You know, Fars wanted to turn Yugoslavia and Behemoth into direct regions at that time, but after Ferdinand's death, he still pinched his nose and recognized Archduke Joseph. The surrender of Earl Nibingham, Earl Barnet, Viscount Angeloy, and Baron Exon meant that they became vassals of the Emperor of Brittany with their own territories. They just changed the emperor they were loyal to, and their noble status could not be deprived. But if Baron Exon pledged allegiance to Charlotte, that would have another meaning. That meant that the Baron was not loyal to the Emperor of Brittany, but to the Earl of Mechlin. There is a similar old saying in Europe, the vassal of a vassal is not my vassal. Charlotte thought about it and readily agreed to the surrender of the four nobles and the loyalty of Baron Exon. He immediately mobilized all his troops and entered the territories of the four nobles. When Earl Nibingham, Earl Barnet, Viscount Angeloy, and Baron Exon saw Andreas, they no longer had any doubts about the Viscount Constantine and his son's surrender to Charlotte. How can there be a situation in the world where the father is there but the son is not, or the son is there but the father is not? They all belong to the nobles in the remote areas of the Black Phoenix dynasty, and the news they received is not so well informed. They were really scared by Charlotte. It was the first time for Charlotte to accept the surrender of the nobles and accept the four nobles to swear allegiance to His Majesty, the Emperor of Brittany, and swear allegiance to himself. He felt very fresh. He immediately announced on behalf of His Majesty the Emperor that the titles, wealth, and territories of the four nobles were inviolable, and took the opportunity to control their private knights. This matter was actually against the rules, but the four nobles did not dare to say a word, because they not only met Andreas, but also met 9 saints. They even met the former Grand Master of the Royal Knights of the Fars Empire. Kratos' reputation was in full swing in Fars, and even in the Black Phoenix dynasty, it was well known. After all, he was the top one. Except for Viscount Constantine, no one in the Black Phoenix dynasty dared to say that they could win this holy mountain of light. With such a magnificent army and such a luxurious Holy Rank camp, Charlotte could not only seize their military power, but even if she did something more unruly, they could only endure it silently. After taking down the four nobles who blocked the road, the only thing in front of Charlotte was Thessa. The people who had been guarding Thessa for generations were also members of the Misu family, but Thessa was only a baron. The current Baron of Thessa was called Meireme Misu. Baron Meireme Misu was a low-key person, and no one knew how powerful he was, but almost everyone knew that he had a fleet and 2 magic alchemy warships. Therefore, although Charlotte had subdued 4 nobles and had 14 holy ranks under her command, she still did not dare to underestimate Baron Meireme Misu. When his army approached Thessaly, he did not attack the city immediately, but sent a letter of persuasion, hoping that the Baron would put the overall situation and the lives of the residents of Thessaly first, and not resist stubbornly, and surrender as soon as possible to avoid the war and the destruction of lives. However, as Charlotte expected, the Baron generously refused to surrender. Chapter 440 I am already under the command of Grand Duchess Misu, let him retreat. Charlotte led 10 saints and 4 newly defected nobles to the outskirts of Thessaly. Thessaly was a port city, and half of it was in the sea. It consisted of 6 islands and more than 20 giant reefs, connected by magnificent stone arch bridges, so that many ships could even sail into Thessaly. Baron Meireme Misu stood on the top of the city wall, looking at the approaching army, not panicking at all, and said to a waiter beside him, "Go out and tell Mr. Mechlin that I have returned to the Misu family and am again under the command of Grand Duchess Misu, and ask him to retreat." The waiter agreed, hurriedly got down the city wall, rode a fast horse, galloped to the front of the 2 armies, and shouted loudly. Baron Meireme said, "We have returned to the Misu family and are under the command of the Duchess. She is the commander-in-chief of the 4-nation alliance and the commander-in-chief of Byron. You have nothing to do here anymore, Mr. Mechlin. You can turn your team around and attack other places." The 4 newly joined Black Phoenix nobles, Earl Nibingham, Earl Barnet, Viscount Angeloy, and Baron Exon, all looked unhappy, but they dared not say anything. Baron Exon said in a flattering way, "Daughter Misu is also a member of the coalition. She first seized Thessa, so we can only give way." Earl Nibingham took a look and saw that Earl Mechlin had no expression on his face. He smiled slightly and had the mentality of watching the show. Although he had not had much contact with Charlotte, he believed that this newly promoted Fars noble would definitely not tolerate such a thing. The other 2 nobles were indignant and shouted, "Even if it's Duchess Misu, she can't take our credit. We must negotiate with him." Seriously, Count Barnet even volunteered, I am willing to discuss the withdrawal with Baron May, but they must pay a certain price. Without enough money, supplies, and food, we can't just leave." Charlotte said nothing, stretched out her hand to take a knight's lance from Dubin's hand, urged bloody glory, and threw the knight's lance with all her strength, nailing the waiter who sent the message to death on the battlefield between the two armies. Charlotte looked coldly at the top of the city of Thessa, waved her hand, and shouted, "Attack the city." Charlotte had no good feelings for Grand Duchess Misu. There were some grievances between them in the past, and Misu had already surrendered to Byron. A Grand Duchess of Byron wanted Count Mechlin of Fars to give in? Who did she think she was? How much face did she have? Baron Exon was surprised and said, "Master Mechlin, the other side has surrendered. They are now Duchess Misu's men." Charlotte said calmly, "The envoy just said it very heroically, if you want to fight, then fight. We will give the brave Thessatian people a decent battlefield." Several nobles looked at each other and saw that the 10 saints under Charlotte had gradually taken off. They also understood each other and urged their fighting spirit to take off and kill Thessatian. Baron Mary Misu had never expected that Charlotte would actually kill his servants and declare war immediately. His face changed drastically and he hurried down the city wall. Just as he was about to go to one of his magic alchemy warships, Andreas, the fastest one, had already arrived first. He said he didn't want to fight the Black Phoenix, but just now, when Andreas heard Baron Mary Misu say that he had surrendered to Duchess Misu, he was filled with anger. In his heart, he had already secretly classified Baron Mary from a Black Phoenix man to Byron man. When Charlotte shot the waiter who came to deliver the message and ordered a war, Andreas was the first to rush into the sky. To him, Mary Misu was a traitor to the Black Phoenix and was not among those he refused to fight. Mary certainly knew Andreas. He just shouted, "For the sake of the Viscount, let me go." Andreas burst into anger and shouted, "You are all a bunch of traitors." He stabbed down with a sword, accompanied by countless clear-bird calls. How could poor Baron Mary Misu be his opponent? The Baron was just a mid-level high-end extraordinary person. He only resisted 2 or 3 moves before Andreas cut off his head. Once the Baron died, Thessa city had no more power to resist. Although 2 saints were vacated, they wisely chose to surrender when they saw more than 10 saints besieging from all directions. These were 2 saints of the 19th level, barely comparable to Vigo. Even if they fought alone, they were almost no match for anyone. Even if they joined forces, they could not beat the Golden Gothralf and others, let alone Kratos. What's more, Charlotte's tactics were not based on martial ethics at all. How could he want to fight alone? Kratos, Black Dragon and others were already used to it. Only the newly joined elephants Argon and Andreas had not yet integrated into the style of this team, but it didn't affect anything. The Knights of Thessa surrendered in large numbers without their chief general. It took Charlotte just over an hour to occupy the city. In fact, there was a little episode. Someone wanted to steal a magic alchemy warship to escape, but the crew on the ship saw the saints everywhere and refused the officer's order. A saint-level warrior with a magic alchemy warship can even resist several of the same level, but the man who wanted to steal the ship was not even a saint-level warrior, and Charlotte had too many saint-level warriors under his command. Even if they drove the magic alchemy warship away, the saint-level warriors under his command could catch up and break the magic array of the magic alchemy warship. The knights and fleet of Thessa had heard of Charlotte's reputation a long time ago. As long as they did not resist, he was quite good to those who surrendered, but if they resisted, they would be thrown to feed the orcs, and no one wanted to become food for the orcs. When Charlotte knew about this, the soldiers of the fleet had already tied up the officer and sent him to him to seek credit. Charlotte took a look at the young officer and asked, "Are you willing to surrender?" The officer couldn't help but cursed, "I will never surrender to the Fars people." Charlotte put her hand on her neck and made a gesture of cutting open. Immediately, someone cut his throat with a knife. The young officer with a very rebellious spirit died immediately. No one cared about his name at all, and no one even took this unsuccessful rebellion as a big deal. Charlotte was about to accept her new team when Andreas fell from the sky and said, "There is a fleet sailing towards Thessaly." Judging from the flag, it is Misu's northern fleet, Charlotte said lightly. It turns out that Baron Mary did not lie. It's a pity that he died, however, don't mention this to others. It will affect the friendly atmosphere of the Four-Nation Alliance. Chapter 441 Legendary Battleship vs. Legendary Battleship. Andreas was silent for a moment and said, "How about you try to destroy Misu's northern fleet?" Charlotte looked at Andreas with praise and said, "What a good idea." After Grand Duchess Misu defected to Byron, she spent all the wealth accumulated by her family over the years and worked hard to expand, restoring some vitality to the Northern Fleet. At this time, the Northern Fleet had a legendary battleship, the Fontainebleau, and 8 magic alchemy battleships. Including Grand Duchess Misu, there were a total of 13 saints and countless extraordinary people. Even when the Northern Fleet was at its weakest, Grand Duchess Misu's power was still not inferior to that of the old Count of Brittany and the Minister of War, Galen Nord. It can be said that if Grand Duchess Misu had not defected and joined Byron, Radmire would not have usurped the throne, and Count of Brittany would not have rebelled. It's a pity that there are no ifs in the world. From the siege of Zimmermann by the Royal Holy Order, which led to the withdrawal of the Empire's Chancellor and several Royal Holy Orders from politics, to the wars with Byron and Black Phoenix, which caused Grand Duchess Mepsa to defect, the decline of the Empire seemed sudden, but in fact it was traceable and gradual. It can be said that the Axel dynasty has too many shortcomings and has reached its end. Even without Brittany, it will be over sooner or later. After all, Duchess Mepsu may not rebel. Duchess Mepsu stood on the deck of the Fontainebleau, looking at Thessa. Her heart was surging. If she took back Thessa, she could regain control of the north and restore the glory of her family before they left the north. Only by controlling the north can the Misu family's northern fleet be truly worthy of its name. As long as I take over Thessa and control the north, the Misu family will be able to rise again. With a Fontainebleau, I can explore the raging sea again. If I can master that secret, no other family on this continent can compare with Misu. Duchess Misu was in high spirits. She did not think that Thessa would stop her, not to mention that it was originally guarded by Misu's Marim. Even if Marim had any ulterior motives, it would be impossible to compete with a full-scale northern fleet. Duchess Misu even thought that after occupying Thessa, she would command the fleet to land and seize as much land as possible. Although the north could not unite with Duke Misu, it was entirely possible to communicate through the fleet. A saint descended from the sky and whispered, "My Lord Duke. Cessus has changed its flag." Duchess Misu raised her eyebrows slightly and asked, "Whose flag is it?" The saint replied, "It's the flag of Count Charlotte Mechlin." Duchess Misu frowned slightly and said, "It's the son-in-law of the Brittany family, Adosa. Go and tell Charlotte to get out of the way." "Cessus is my target," a young girl agreed. "Yes, mother, her full name is Adosa Misu. She is the daughter of Duchess Misu and her only daughter. She received all the love from Duchess Misu. She was personally trained in martial arts since she was a child. When she grew up and entered school, she made rapid progress all the way. Her grades were not inferior to geniuses such as Zimmermann and Mendelmann, but she was 4 or 5 years younger, and her growing years were staggered with it too." Adosa was very curious about Charlotte. After all, Charlotte was now a famous man on the continent. She didn't even carry a weapon, and didn't think Charlotte would fight her. After all, they were friendly forces. Charlotte was ready to fight the Northern Fleet. If time went back a few months, how could he have the ability and confidence to fight an open battle with Grand Duchess Misu? If time went back more than a year, back to the auction of magic items, he was still a small shrimp. In the eyes of Grand Duchess Misu, there was no such a small figure as Charlotte Mechlin. Even now, Grand Duchess Misu probably didn't know that she had met Charlotte before. But now Charlotte is full of courage. He is also a powerful man with more than 10 saints. Although he is still a little short of it and is still at the 17th level, he is not afraid to go to war with any great nobles. Adosa turned into a black stream of light and flew to the top of the city of Thessa. Charlotte was slightly surprised, because Adosa practiced dark fighting spirit, and only those who came from the University of Sheffield could practice dark fighting spirit. He couldn't help but habitually shouted, "Which senior brother or sister is it?" "Sheffield University, Charlotte Mechlin, a graduate of the 33rd year of Black Moon, is here." Adosa didn't expect that the two would have this opening line. She stopped in the top of the city of Cessus and said, "I really am your senior sister, call me Senior Adosa." Charlotte called out more obediently, "Senior Adosa. Are you here to negotiate on behalf of the Duchess of Misu?" "Let me make it clear in advance that His Majesty the Emperor of Brittany said that all the conquered territories will be incorporated into the Earldom of Mechlin. There is no way I can give up such a large territory. If the Duchess of Misu has any inappropriate ideas, please take them back as soon as possible to avoid being scolded in an indecent manner." Adosa was not angry. She smiled slightly and said, "We have 13 saints in the Misu family. Charlotte raised a finger and shouted, "Everyone, stand up and show it to Senior Sister Adosa." The 10 saints under Charlotte and the 4 new nobles who had joined him soared into the air together. He said with a little pride, "I just happen to have one more." Adosa was really surprised. Although she had heard a lot of rumors about Charlotte, after all, Misa's family had left Fars and joined Baron, so they were not so well informed. She really didn't know that Charlotte actually had such a large group of saints. Adosa's face showed surprise. After a long while, he said, "Even if you have so many saints, we have the Fontainebleau. You are also from Fars, you should know the power of the Fontainebleau, especially when it is in my mother's hands. No one can compete with my mother." Charlotte took off the gold ring in his hand and threw it into the sea with all his strength. He was already a high-level extraordinary at the 17th level. This throw was full of force, and the gold ring flew very far. For a moment, Adosa didn't understand what Charlotte wanted to do, but then her face changed, because the golden ring thrown by Charlotte fell into the sea, stirring up huge waves, hundreds of meters high, as if a mountain was thrown into the sea, and the mountains and seas were surging, as if a god punched the sea open. Even the northern fleet in the distance was affected, and was pushed back several kilometers by the waves. It took several saints to stop the waves. A legendary warship appeared in the surging waves as high as a mountain. That's right, this is the Holy Light Kingdom. Chapter 442, Senior Sister Adosa, isn't it a legendary battleship? I have one here too. Charlotte pointed and said, Senior Adosa, isn't it a legendary battleship? I have one here too. Adosa covered her mouth, her heart pounding like a deer. She suddenly understood one thing, why this man was said to be favored by the Grand Princess of the Ingrima Empire, Megiome, and even a woman like Menelman, who was arrogant and charming, had all kinds of rumors about Charlotte. Adosa even heard that Strasbourg Rose also had an ambiguous relationship with Charlotte. She suddenly understood everything. Such a man is indeed very attractive. After graduating from university, Adosa followed her mother and joined the family's northern fleet. She traveled across the 7 seas and even participated in the exploration of the raging sea. Although she had experienced many battles, had rich sailing experience, and had extraordinary martial arts, she was definitely not a 19th level saint like Vigo, but because she had been on the sea for many years, her reputation was not loud. She now regretted that before she went out to sea, why didn't she leave some legends in Strasbourg to attract the attention of this junior? Adosa wore a magic robe common only seen on the ocean. This was a high-level alchemical artifact with functions such as water repellency. This magic robe wrapped around her curvy body made her look like an ocean fairy, riding the waves in the air. She covered her mouth. Not only did she not look heroic as usual, but she looked a little girl. Charlotte didn't know that she had hit the heart of the senior sister Adosa with one blow. She thought she had failed to show off, but the other party didn't speak for a long time. He thought to himself, it's a cold scene, I just thought that I was already showing off at the peak of my life. Why didn't senior sister Adosa react? That's right. After all, she is the daughter of the Misa family. She is well informed. A mere legendary battleship is not enough to shock people. Do you want to show off more? How can I use the blood spirit to be most effective? It's not that I want to show off. If I can scare off the Duchess of Misu, it's better than fighting. There are more than a dozen saints. In a melee, if a few of them die, it would be too painful. Even if Vigo dies, I can't bear it. Charlotte was thinking about it, and saw a ray of light rising into the sky. A tall woman with extraordinary temperament and a queen-like aura flew into the air and landed beside Adosa. It was the Grand Duchess of Misu. Charlotte wanted to say long time no see, but she thought it was vulgar, so she simply kept silent and smiled slightly, but secretly asked the Golden Goat Rolf to get closer to her, so as to avoid a surprise attack from Grand Duchess Misu and stab her directly. Grand Duchess Misu looked at the Holy Light Kingdom with a complicated expression, and whispered, I didn't expect that someone could actually repair this legendary battleship. What she didn't know was that Charlotte hadn't repaired this legendary battleship yet. Charlotte still lacked 3 things to completely repair this legendary battleship. Now she could only barely summon it, and it looked like it was real. Archduchess Misu passed her daughter and landed directly on the top of the city wall of Thessa, saying, We meet again, Count Mecklen. Charlotte was slightly surprised, but heard the Archduchess say, Last time, you and Anne attended my auction together. Charlotte was even more surprised and asked, I was still a nobody at that time. Archduchess Misu chuckled and said, You can seduce the precious daughter of that old man in Brittany. How can you not be a nobody? You should know that at that time, at least 3 dukes, 6 earls, and countless low-level nobles in the empire paid attention to you. After all, the empire was turbulent at that time, and many people suspected that you were a spy from Byron. Want to start with Anne and knock open the power of Count Brittany? Charlotte looked embarrassed and whispered, not really, not really, Archduchess Misu said. Later, Count Brittany went to Seagull City to investigate your past, and only then did he dispel this doubt. Charlotte was shocked and shouted, His Majesty. Has he sent people to inquire about my past? Duchess Misu smiled faintly and said, What's so surprising about this? I have also inquired about it. Count Mecklen, your past is really colorful. Adosa also landed on the top of the city wall of Thessa and asked, Mother, what kind of person was Count Mecklen before? Charlotte hurriedly said, Duke Mecklen, let's talk about serious things. Grand Duchess Misu glanced at Charlotte and really didn't say anything. In fact, she also knew that if she talked about Charlotte Mecklen's embarrassing things, although she could gain the upper hand in words and even make the other party embarrassed, she would also offend this person. Even though she controlled the Northern Fleet and even owned legendary warships, Grand Duchess Misu was still a little deeply afraid of this latecomer of the Fars Empire. Others have not yet felt it deeply, but she, Menelman, and Sophia Galinold have all joined forces in the sea battle. These 2 young naval commanders have a close relationship with Charlotte. Menelman's first magic alchemy warship was given by Charlotte, and Sophia Galinold's Queen Bee was borrowed by Charlotte. If Charlotte is also on the sea, she can even pull out a fleet that is no less than the huge fleet of the Northern Fleet. However, the Northern Fleet is the Misu family, with hundreds of years of wealth accumulation, countless years of strength in the sea. How many years has Charlotte debuted? If it is Fars, who is she afraid of? Even the Emperor of Brittany has to pat behind, and Galinold has to be a little behind. After all, these 2 have no ability to interfere in the navy. Even if they are powerful, Duchess Misu is not afraid. She did not mention Charlotte's past and said, Then let's talk about something serious. I want Cessus. Charlotte's face was burning. He did not expect that his father-in-law had already investigated his background, nor did he expect that even Duchess Misu had investigated his background. What if Charlotte Mecklen's past was really exposed? What should he do? Charlotte was even confused, but when Duchess Misu asked for Thessa, he still refused flatly. Impossible, absolutely impossible. I have already captured Thessa, it is mine, the new land of my Earl of Mecklen. No one can take it from me, Duchess Misu said lightly. Now the Black Phoenix army is all concentrated on the front line, and the capital Black Phoenix City is empty. Give me Thessa, and I will let my 10 saints help you attack Black Phoenix City. Thessa and the North have special meanings to my Misu family, but for you, Earl Mecklen, how can these wild lands compare to Black Phoenix City? How about it? Make a decision. Charlotte waved her hand. And immediately someone took the map of the entire Black Phoenix territory. Charlotte looked at the map and saw that she started from South Seraph. Well, now it is the Earl of Mecklen. Bypassing the core area of the Black Phoenix, the direction of the raid showed a strange arc and hit the other side of the Black Phoenix border. The more than 30 cities he conquered were like pearls on a rope, in a straight line instead of being connected. Duchess Misu's words made him set his sights on the Black Phoenix City. As one of the 5 great empires, the capital of the Black Phoenix dynasty is a famous city in the old world that is not inferior to Strasbourg. Like Breton, the capital of Ingrima, it is a coastal city, but the climate is milder than Breton. It is not only an excellent port, but also the most beautiful tourist city. It has navigable routes with dozens of countries in the New and Old Worlds, and its business is prosperous. Because the Black Phoenix dynasty was founded late, its navy is not strong enough, and it lacks overseas territories and overseas vassal states, but it is precisely because of this that the Black Phoenix's maritime trade is developed. Charlotte has not gone around to the rear of the Black Phoenix City, the capital of the Black Phoenix dynasty. As Duchess Misu said, the main forces of the Black Phoenix dynasty are all in the front to resist the 4-nation coalition forces, and his side is extremely empty. Earl Nabinham, Earl Barnett, Viscount Angeloy, and Baron Exon, who could have formed a resistance force, would have been difficult for Charlotte to break through this line of defense if they joined forces with the nearby nobles. But who made Viscount Constantine betray the country like Duchess Misu? The surrender of these 4 nobles without a fight left the last line of defense of Black Phoenix City open. If Charlotte could lead the army straight down, even without the help of Grand Duchess Misu, there would be a certain probability of conquering Black Phoenix City. If there was the help of Grand Duchess Misu, Charlotte would be able to gather more than 100 saints in her hands. Even in Felendon, for a long time, Fars and Baron did not invest such a strong force. Charlotte looked at the map carefully for a while and said, "Let's unite our forces, Duchess Misu. We had some unpleasantness before, and you also betrayed Fars, but in the face of war, these are trivial matters that are not worth mentioning. Let's unite our forces to swallow the biggest victory of this war, and fight, form an alliance, advance and retreat together, and protect our territory. What do you think?" This time it was Grand Duchess Misu's turn to be silent. When Adosa saw Charlotte, who was full of vigor and vitality, she never thought that there would be such a young man who could compete with her mother and not lose, and every word was full of ambition, and they were also discussing the matter of destroying the capital of a great empire. Adosa decided that she would personally draw this scene when she went back. When she was in college, she took painting as an elective, and painting is still her favorite to this day. Well, Count Mecklen met Duchess Misu. This painting was later included in the new edition of the biography of Sherlock. Adosa gave the copyright to Anne for free. There are a few small stories here. For example, how did Annie and Adosa know each other? And how did they complete this transaction? I won't go into details here. Chapter 443 Mixed Military Strategy. On the top of the city wall of Thessa, Charlotte and Duchess Misu signed the covenant of Count Mecklen and Duchess Misu, which had a great influence on later generations. The two agreed to be friendly allies and to maintain consistency in all positions, except for the national war between Fars and Bran. If one of them encounters a war, the other will provide all necessary assistance including material support and force. The two families will cooperate closely in various fields, including economy, trade, shipping, culture, art, handicrafts and other industries. Charlotte also prayed to the Serpent of Fate and received the protection of this righteous god, leaving a circle of silver snake marks on the covenant. This move also surprised Duchess Misu secretly. She became more wary of Charlotte and thought to herself, "Is he the patron of the Serpent of Fate?" The Serpent of Fate is the most mysterious and unpredictable of the 9 gods, and the next era is the era of fate. The Breton family and the Mecklen family are both patrons of the Serpent of Fate. Their future is limitless. At least before the end of the era of fate, they cannot be enemies. After the two families signed the covenant, Charlotte withdrew from Thessa as promised. When he withdrew from Thessa, he took away all the fleets of Thessa, as well as the knights that originally belonged to Baron Merime Misu, and also packed up the baron's property. He cleaned up quite cleanly. He also divided the knights of Favonius into 2. One was led by him to continue attacking Black Phoenix City from land, and a part of the troops was divided, led by the Golden Goat Roth, along the coastline, intending to attack Black Phoenix City by sea. Duchess Misu also abided by the agreement and lent out 10 saints. The person who led the 10 saints was naturally the daughter of Duchess Misu, Adosa Misu. She was also Charlotte's new senior sister. Well, he also felt that he seemed to have too many senior sisters. Both sides had a tacit understanding and did not mention Baron Merime Sumai, as if this baron had never existed in this world. After leaving the city of Thessa, Andreas brought 6 saints over and said to Charlotte, "They have some ideas. Do you want to chat with them?" 4 of the 6 saints were captured during the previous siege, and the other 2 were Baron Merime Misu's men and the captains of the 2 magic alchemy warships. They were originally quite reserved and had some other ideas, but when Charlotte and Grand Duchess Misu signed the covenant, they were also fortunate to watch and were arranged to sit in the front. After all, they were saints, and even if they were captives, their status was different. When the 6 saints saw that Charlotte and Misu had more than 20 saints combined, they were deeply shocked. They all understood one thing. If they didn't surrender, they might not have any chance in the future. Charlotte smiled and said, "6 gentlemen. I am about to attack Black Phoenix City. You are all Black Phoenix people. I believe you are very familiar with the city. No, don't get me wrong. I won't ask you to join the war. You are all Black Phoenix people. I will never let you participate in the war to attack Black Phoenix City. That would be too cruel. I hope you can find ways to contact your relatives and friends and let them leave quickly to avoid being affected by the war." Charlotte proposed a very humane method, which made the 6 saints feel relieved and acceptable. They didn't even have time to propose surrender, but they were already assigned to do things, but no one felt anything wrong. These 6 saints are all 19th level. Well, The stronger saints were all transferred to the front line, fighting against a four-nation coalition. So Charlotte was not very enthusiastic. After all, they were different from Andreas. Many people did not even get promoted to saints through practice, but took potions or forcibly promoted through some rituals. All the nobles were like this. Charlotte quickly gave the newly formulated battle plan to the 6 saints, and asked them to indicate the attack direction of the Knights of Favonius in the letters to their relatives and friends, and not to let ordinary people be involved in the war. These saints did not think too much. After all, this world did not have the cunning military wisdom of the earth. They could not understand this mixed military strategy of fishing in troubled waters, hiding the truth, and luring the tiger away from the mountain, and really thought it was a good thing. Charlotte's military plan was quickly delivered to Black Phoenix City through the letters of these saints, and spread all over the city. The royal family and nobles of Black Phoenix were confused for a while in the face of this sudden attack, but at the critical moment of life and death, they were finally efficient. They quickly mobilized the remaining troops in the city and prepared to ambush Charlotte's Knights of Favonius halfway. Charlotte did not carry out his so-called military plan at all, so he did not encounter any obstacles. He marched all the way and killed directly to the Black Phoenix City. In theory, Black Phoenix City, like Strasbourg, is protected by the 9 righteous gods, and there are no fewer miraculous buildings of the 9 righteous gods in Black Phoenix City. Any invading enemy will find it difficult to break through this strong city that is rare in the old continent. But Charlotte gathered a lot of local troops of the Black Phoenix dynasty along the way, and even prepared a batch of normal clothes for the Black Phoenix people. At this time, people kept fleeing from Black Phoenix City, and he just let his Knights of Favonius disguise themselves as Black Phoenix people and gradually enter the city. Charlotte did not expect that his half-baked plan would actually work well. He sent the Knights of Favonius into Black Phoenix City in batches, and actually sent more than 10,000 people in one go, and Black Phoenix City did not respond. Charlotte calculated that the military force was enough to start a war, and immediately brought all the saints, including his 10 saints, 4 nobles who surrendered, 6 newly surrendered saints, and 10 saints supported by Duchess Misu, who also followed the ordinary people into the city and mixed into Black Phoenix City. Charlotte has been here for more than a year, and has been to many countries on the continent, such as Breton in Ingrimer and Asselberg in the Lionheart dynasty, but this is the first time he has come to Black Phoenix City. Black Phoenix City is a typical trading city, and there are even people from overseas countries. These people have different customs and behaviors from the residents of the old continent. Most of them are here for business, and they also bring a lot of goods from overseas. These goods are not available in the old continent and look very novel. Charlotte suddenly remembered the small task given by the Destiny Serpent, which was to send people to all the righteous buildings in Black Phoenix City and secretly leave the mark of the Destiny Serpent in the hidden corners. Well, Charlotte wanted to earn more destiny joy in one go. Chapter 444, Hadrian's Life in Obscurity. When the Orc army attacked Strasbourg, Charlotte once muttered, "Why didn't the Orc saints sneak into the city first and then start the war? At least the 9 great gods' miraculous buildings have no place to play their powerful defensive role." So when he attacked Black Phoenix, he first used a trick to transfer the last defensive force in the city, and then did not attack directly, but first let his soldiers disguise themselves and sneak into Black Phoenix City, and then brought all his saints disguised as ordinary people and sneaked into the city. When Charlotte left the traces of the Serpent of Destiny on the miraculous buildings of the 9 great gods, his saints had already arrived near the Black Phoenix Palace. The Black Phoenix Emperor Hadrian has been unable to sleep at night and has lost his appetite recently. He is worried about how to resist the 4-nation coalition every day. He has gathered all the troops in the country and vowed to fight the 4-nation coalition to the end. Recently, it was reported that a Frisian named Charlotte Mecklen was going to bypass the front line and attack the Black Phoenix City. He got the other party's military plan first and immediately sent out the last army to ambush this daring enemy army on the way. The Black Phoenix Emperor Hadrian even ordered that the army that dared to defend the capital of the Black Phoenix dynasty be slaughtered without leaving any prisoners. Even so, he was still very angry and even issued a special decree to capture Charlotte alive and bring her back to the Black Phoenix City to kill this bastard with his own hands. How could he be so bold as to want to attack his Black Phoenix City? Charlotte looked at the most magnificent building in the city and felt a lot of emotion in his heart. Last time, he broke into the palace of Fars and killed the false king Hogmir. Is it the turn of the Black Phoenix Emperor this time? Charlotte was even a little worried that he would leave an indecent nickname of a regicide in the history of this world. You must not kill Giannis Hadrian yourself. It doesn't matter who kills him. I think Vigo is a good choice. He is not from the Black Phoenix. Killing Emperor Giannis Hadrian will not be a historical stain. Old Goat is not bad either. He is a great candidate. The patrol soldiers who maintained order in the square in front of the palace seemed to sense something was wrong. There were too many people coming today. They were driving the crowd away. There was even a team of patrol soldiers rushing towards Charlotte. Charlotte smiled and said, "Let's start the carnival. There is no defense here today." The Black Phoenix City had already sent out the last troop, and even reached the point where the patrol soldiers who were usually idle were recruited. For the Knights of Favonius, which had more than 30 saints, it was indeed the same as being defenseless. After the order was issued, dozens of saints took off together and broke into the Black Phoenix Palace in just a moment. The warriors of the Knights of Favonius who had sneaked into the city also showed their weapons and rushed to the palace. The patrolling troops had never expected that the enemy would appear in the capital of the Black Phoenix dynasty. They were in a hurry and could not organize an effective resistance, and soon collapsed. Charlotte was not in a hurry. He walked leisurely towards the Black Phoenix Palace. When he walked into the Black Phoenix Palace, the battle was over. Kratos used one arm to lift an old man in the air. The old man's clothes were messy. He must have just suffered a little damage. His legs were kicking, but how could he struggle to get out? His face was flushed, and he made a hoarse sound, but he couldn't curse. Almost all members of the Knights of Favonius would kneel on one knee when they saw Charlotte, and shouted. The entire Knights of Favonius welcomed Count Mecklen to his loyal Black Phoenix Palace. Dozens of saints were divided into several teams. The saints directly under Charlotte were the most relaxed, just nodding their heads. The subordinates of Grand Duchess Misa were also quite respectful when they saw Charlotte, and would perform an imperial salute. The Black Phoenix saints who surrendered were the most humble, and would kneel on one knee like ordinary knights to welcome Count Mecklen. Charlotte looked around, and the royal family members of the Black Phoenix should have been caught, kneeling densely on the ground. Although he was not a person who would get carried away, he couldn't help but feel, the land is under my feet, and the national affairs are in my hands. Who dares to say more? The mood was surging, and it couldn't be added. Seeing Charlotte's ambitious look, the Black Dragon felt that he had a great responsibility and should step forward to teach Charlotte not to do so. He hurriedly said, "Master Mecklen, we haven't occupied the entire Black Phoenix city yet." Charlotte nodded and said, "All members of the Black Phoenix royal family will be escorted to Strasbourg and presented to His Majesty the Brittany. Kratos, you are responsible for guarding the palace. Black Dragon, open the city gate and let our army in. Senior Sister Adosa, you take a group of people to kick the doors of every noble in Black Phoenix City and ask them if they want to recognize me as their master. Those who are willing will not be harmed, and those who are unwilling will have their property confiscated. All of them will be locked up and escorted to Strasbourg with the Black Phoenix royal family." Charlotte kept giving orders, and soon the saints and high-ranking cotters of the Knights of Favonius went their separate ways and began to occupy various parts of Black Phoenix City. By the evening, the Knights of Favonius had completed the occupation of Black Phoenix City. Teams of knights began to attack everywhere, trying to connect Black Phoenix City with the original occupied area and connect them into one. Charlotte tried it. The condition for the maze of Black Phoenix City was also 18 taxes. He spent 7 or 8 days to maze Black Phoenix City 3 times, and then escorted the captives who refused to surrender to Machupi in an endless stream. In Machupi, they would be reloaded and sent to Strasbourg. As the rebellious nobles were sent away by their families, Black Phoenix City soon became quiet. For the residents of Black Phoenix City, Charlotte Mecklen was the one who resisted the devil. All the people who resisted disappeared, and their families disappeared completely. Charlotte did not take it lightly. He was preparing to welcome the army that was going to ambush him back, but he waited and waited, but he did not wait for this army, but waited for the battle report from the front line. This battle report was earth-shattering. When Charlotte received it, her hands were shaking. The four-nation alliance was hit hard by the Black Phoenix's Count Georgiadi Hadrian in the famous city of Black Phoenix, Southern Ramagan. This earl used a unique military strategy that only appeared in Chinese history. He gathered all the Black Phoenix saints and formed an assault team. Within one day, he continuously attacked the camp of the four-nation alliance, won 4 battles and 4 victories, killed 11 saints, repelled the four-nation alliance, and even severely damaged the traitorous Viscount Constantine in front of the two armies. The four-nation alliance was forced to retreat temporarily. George Hadrian was unknown throughout his life. He was only named an earl because of his royal blood, but overnight, he became the first famous general on the continent, and his reputation was catching up with that of Zimmermann Axel Robin. Chapter 445 Emperor Gianus Hadrian, George Adi. Give up the fight and surrender to Count Mecklen. In the face of national survival, some people will protect themselves, some will be angry and helpless, some will choose to sit back and even surrender to the enemy, but some will stand up and turn the tide. George Hadrian has been unknown throughout his life. He has never been in the limelight, nor has he done anything amazing. No one in the ranking of masters in the entire old world may remember him. Just like Charlotte will always forget Vigo. But it was this Count George Hadrian, who had no reputation, who calmly came out and formulated a simple, bold, crazy, but very effective strategy when facing the coalition of 4 countries, when everyone was in despair, and even many people shirked their responsibilities and were unwilling to serve as the main general. Taking advantage of the gap between the 4 coalitions fighting separately and not yet closing, all the Black Phoenix Saints were gathered to attack the Ingrima army that came from afar. Count Landmark misjudged the situation and thought that the Black Phoenix army wanted to break through and escape, so he did not invest all his troops. Moreover, he did not want Ingrima to fight to the death with the main force of the Black Phoenix, which would allow the armies of other countries to take advantage. It was this strategic mistake that Count George Hadrian seized upon, and he defeated Ingrima's army, and then turned to attack Fars. Although His Majesty Brittany also led the army in person, he was not at the front line. Antonio was not there that day, and George Hadrian defeated the 7 knights of Fars in half an hour, and then turned his full strength to Baron. This was a tough battle. Juno Arthur did not accompany the army, but Constantine was. The two fought fiercely, but the result was that the former Black Phoenix's strongest man was defeated, and the unknown George Hadrian won a great victory and defeated Baron's army. At that time, the Lionheart King Baldwin Asa faced a Black Phoenix army, which had defeated 3 armies in a row and was in high spirits and fighting desperately, and Sidon chose to retreat with all his troops. This battle was the first time that George Hadrian led troops. But it was this war that made the Black Phoenix Earl famous all over the world, and everyone in the old continent knew him. It really fulfilled an old saying on Earth: if you don't make a sound, you will be amazing. If you don't fly, you will fly into the sky. Even the Emperor of Brittany couldn't help but sigh afterwards and said, George Hadrian is the first military god in the old continent from today. Charlotte was willing to attack Black Phoenix City on the premise that the 4-nation coalition could hold the main force of Black Phoenix tightly, leaving the rear empty. But he could never have imagined that the situation could change like this. George Hadrian was able to repel the 4-nation coalition and could return to Black Phoenix City at any time. What could he do to resist such a fierce military god? After reading the battle report, Charlotte took a deep breath and issued more than 10 orders in one breath. The first order was to let the old lizard man go to Machupi and bring back Gianus Hadrian. He sent out dozens of reconnaissance teams to investigate the front line at any time, but he also knew that this was better than nothing. Although George Hadrian had only fought 1 battle, he liked to gather the saints and use them as a commando, which was a famous tactic on the continent. If he still used this tactic, a saint-level team might appear in Black Phoenix City within a few days. Even if ordinary reconnaissance teams found the Earl's team, they would not have the opportunity to send back intelligence. Charlotte defeated the capital of the Black Phoenix dynasty. In terms of reputation on the battlefield, he was not much inferior to George Hadrian. However, Charlotte was not in the mood to compare with the first general of the old continent. At this moment, he hoped that this Count George Hadrian would continue to fight the 4-nation coalition and not return to the capital, Black Phoenix City. Although Charlotte had dozens of saints under his command, facing a fierce man who could defeat Constantine, he could only be defeated. There was no second possibility. As for leaving Black Phoenix City, well, it was an option. In the next few days, Charlotte received dozens of battle reports. After occupying the Black Phoenix City, he had dozens of sets of magic alchemy communication equipment. Originally, the Knights of Favonius did not have such magic equipment, but now they can communicate long distances. He soon broke his luck. After Count George Hadrian defeated the 4-nation coalition, He did not wait for the four countries' armies to regroup, and played a beautiful trick of escaping, abandoning the front line of Sahel and Ramagan, and the army went back to the capital Black Phoenix City with all its strength. The day after Charlotte received this battle report, he opened the miracle building defense of Black Phoenix City. He opened it for only 2 hours, and saw dozens of streams of light passing through Black Phoenix City. Charlotte hurriedly climbed to the highest point of the palace. Even though there were more than 30 saints around him, when he looked through the defense light shield constructed by the miracle building and saw the eyes of a middle-aged man with a plain face and no characteristics, he couldn't help but shudder slightly. Charlotte waved his hand, and someone slowly lifted up Emperor Yanis Hadrian, who was brought back urgently. He shouted, "Your Majesty Emperor Yanis Hadrian, please ask Count Georgiadi Hadrian to surrender quickly. You are his emperor, and he should not fight for your life." Emperor Yanis Hadrian looked embarrassed and shouted, "Georgiadi, give up the fight and surrender to Count Mecklen." Emperor Yanis Hadrian's words made all the saints who came back to rescue him angry. They could never imagine that they had fought hard in the front and risked their lives to defeat the army of the four countries. Almost everyone was injured, and even several people died in the assault, but they did it just to save an emperor who persuaded them to surrender? Tears suddenly streamed down the face of Count Georgiadi Hadrian. He waved his hand and whispered, "I am willing to surrender, please, Count Mecklen, open the defense shield and let me meet His Majesty the Emperor again." Charlotte took a deep breath. He did not dare to take risks, but he had a plan for this situation. He shouted, "Lower the defense shield and prepare to throw spears." Dozens of saints each held a knight's lance in their hands, aiming at Emperor Yanis Hadrian. As the defense shield slowly lowered, Emperor Yanis Hadrian, who was hung on the flagpole, was revealed. Seeing Count Georgiadi Hadrian slowly lowering his altitude and appearing in front of him, the emperor whispered, "You use all your fighting spirit to protect me and help me escape." Count Georgiadi Hadrian whispered, "If dozens of saints throw their knight spears at the same time, even I might die." Emperor Yanis Hadrian roared in a low voice, "Then let them die. Isn't it their duty to die protecting the emperor?" Count Georgiadi Hadrian was silent for a long time before answering, "Yes, Your Majesty." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, The Regicide, Hadrian of Georgia. Charlotte stared at this peerless military god who had just risen to the battlefield and had only been there for a few days, and he was very nervous. But he was sure that even if Georgiadi Hadrian was 10 times stronger, he could only guarantee that he could survive with the joint efforts of dozens of saints, but he could not guarantee the survival of Emperor Yanis Hadrian. If the Earl wanted to snatch Yanis Hadrian away, he would order the emperor to be killed, so that the other party would bear the title of a regicide and lose the righteousness in the war. However, Charlotte was still very nervous. He was actually quite afraid of such a strong man. After all, Charlotte was just an ordinary traverser. In this life, he was just a civilian, not a brave and fearless warrior. He knew that it was right to do so, but he could not avoid the uneasiness in his heart. Just as Georgiadi Hadrian was about to fall a little further, Charlotte shouted, "Sorry, Count. Please rise a little higher and don't get any closer to the emperor, otherwise I will let them take action." Georgiadi Hadrian took a look at the more than 30 saints who were waiting in full battle array, including the Black Phoenix man he was familiar with. He took a deep breath and slowly rose into the air, moving away from Emperor Yanis Hadrian. When he retreated to the dozens of saints he brought with him, he reached out and grabbed a knight's spear. Then, in full view of everyone, he roared and threw it with all his strength. Charlotte was stunned and didn't know how to give orders for a while. The saints on his side reacted quickly enough. Some of them also threw knight spears to block Georgiadi Hadrian's shot, but some people thought that if they took action, wouldn't there be no way to stop Georgiadi's side from saving people? It was just a little bit of chaos. In the eyes of countless people in Black Phoenix City, the knight's spear of Count Georgiadi Hadrian was as agile as a dragon and as vicious as a snake. It knocked away 7 or 8 blocking spears and pierced through Emperor Yanis Hadrian. The remaining force of the spear hit the defense shield of Black Phoenix City fiercely and pierced it. Emperor Yanis Hadrian lowered his head with difficulty, looking at the huge hole in his chest that could see through the ground below. He trembled and wanted to say something, but his vitality could no longer continue. His head tilted and he died directly. Charlotte looked at the knight's spear inserted on the top of the city and took a deep breath. He finally realized that the Earl really wanted to kill him. The shot just now was just to kill the Emperor, not for any conspiracy. At the same time, he also knew that the protective shield formed by the miracle building actually had its limits. Count Georgiade Hadrian took another knight's lance and shouted, "Attack the city!" Charlotte shouted, "Kratos!" Kratos took a deep breath and shouted, "I know." He slowly floated up, with countless clear lights wrapped around his body. Charlotte had already released a Holy Light Kingdom. Although this legendary warship has not been repaired and cannot sail, it can be used as a battle fortress. Kratos is definitely not as good as Count Georgiade Hadrian, but with the blessing of this legendary warship, he may not be unable to fight. What's more, there is a protective shield of a miracle building in the sky. Then Charlotte heard a loud bang. And dozens of saints hit the miracle shield together, with a fierce momentum. The saints on Charlotte's side also took off. Some were captains of 10,000 cavalry, and hurriedly combined with the momentum of their own knights. Relying on the protective shield of the miracle building, they fought fiercely with the saints on Georgiade Hadrian's side. This time, it was no longer a tender battle. It was not the tacit war that Charlotte was used to. There was no one crushing the other. Just a few minutes after the battle began, Charlotte heard a scream. Baron Exon was burning with flames all over his body. His protective fighting spirit was broken and he fell from the sky with a scream. This was the first saint rank to die. Charlotte had no good feelings for Baron Exon, but this was his first noble retainer. It made him emotional. Soon, a saint rank of Black Phoenix under Georgiade Hadrian fell. He was attacked by the Black Dragon and stabbed with a flaming spear. His whole body was also burning with flames and fell from the sky. His death was exactly the same as Baron Exon. No one knew that the knight's spear in the old lizardman's hand was actually the blood spirit rhino. Charlotte thought that her strength was not enough to participate in the battle of the saint rank, so she naturally lent a blood spirit rhino to the Black Dragon. The blood spirit was blessed by the goddess and embedded with the incarnation of the evil god Enlulu. The second weapon it could transform into was a high-grade holy knight lance. Holding this knight lance, one could borrow some of the power of the evil god Enlulu. The black dragons were flying all over the sky and fighting bravely. He had borrowed the blood spirit several times. He injected his bloodthirsty fighting spirit into this knight lance made by the incarnation of the fire evil god Enlulu. He felt that his power was constantly increasing, and he knocked down another holy order in a blink of an eye. But in the next moment, two Black Phoenix holy orders who had just surrendered to Charlotte were also killed. One was chopped in half and the other had his head smashed. Less than 10 minutes after the war started, 5 holy orders fell one after another. In any battlefield before, including Philandon, there had never been so many holy orders killed in a battle. Charlotte's heart was bleeding. This was his future team. 3 holy orders died in such a short time. How many would die in this battle? Charlotte only hated that he was only at the 17th level and could not join such a battle. He could only release 8 flaming hands and shoot continuously at the sky. All the extraordinary gunners and archers of the Knights of Favonius also shot at the sky. Although they could not help friendly forces, they could consume a little more energy of the enemy's holy level, which was also a result. The Battle of Black Phoenix City was called the Blood Rain War by later generations. Because every few minutes, a holy level would sprinkle blood rain and fall from the sky. The battle was fierce, which was the first in this war in the old continent. No one knew the influence of this battlefield. No one knew that this war represented the end of the Black Phoenix dynasty and was also called the last war of the Black Phoenix. Charlotte stared at the sky with bloodshot eyes. Every time a holy level died, his blood boiled. These were all his subordinates who he had worked hard to collect after traveling through time. He cherished each one of them. Charlotte was a commander who was reluctant to sacrifice even his ordinary soldiers. How could he bear to see his own saint rank being slaughtered like pigs and dogs? All the blood in his body, every bit of bloody glory, was roaring in anger. Unconsciously, the 12th bloody vortex in his body was impacted, and the power stuck at the 17th level broke through the 18th level. Chapter 447, Charlotte Mecklen. You destroyed Black Phoenix City and killed my emperor. Kratos exchanged a move with Georgiade Hadrian. Although his hands were numb from the shock, he managed to keep the fight going. With a long roar, he re-engaged in the counterattack. Kratos is known as the Holy Mountain of Light. He is one of the only 2 among the top 5 who, through their own hard work and practice, have caught up with the three heroes of the Empire. If it weren't for the fact that the old Count of Brittany was so amazing. Well, above Brittany, there was an even more amazing Zimmerman. And then there was Antonio, a rising star. And he was a very good show. Not only Kratos, but even a crazy person like Medapus Axel was suppressed and lost all his glory. In any other era, both Kratos and Medapus would have been famous figures. But they were born in the wrong era. Kratos felt the endless power surging in his body. This was the surging energy provided by the Holy Light Kingdom. He no longer thought or about anything. He just wanted to defeat the opponent in front of him, defeat this terrible enemy, defeat this man who could rival Brittany and even surpass Zimmerman in recent times. After defeating Viscount Constantine, George Hadrian's momentum had accumulated to the peak. He was confident that he could defeat all opponents, even enemies on land with a legendary warship. In addition to them, the most eye-catching on the battlefield was the Black Dragon. He had killed 3 saints and was being entangled by 2 saints of the same level. However, the old lizardman was not afraid at all. He deliberately led the battle and drilled in other directions, constantly accumulating advantages and slowly changing the situation. Every time the saints on Charlotte's side lost a battle, they would hide in the divine light of the miracle building. They were all marked by Charlotte and could enter and exit the protective shield freely, but George Hadrian and his saints had long lost this mark. The battle between the two sides lasted until the evening. George Hadrian had no intention of stopping the battle. He vowed not to retreat until he killed these enemies. Facing the city that could be called his hometown, the Black Phoenix Earl, who was born in the royal family, let out a long roar like a phoenix and shouted, "Charlotte Mecklen! You destroyed the Black Phoenix City, occupied my hometown, and killed my emperor. I must save your life today, although your dog life is far from enough to compensate for all this." From the beginning of the battle, George Hadrian's eyes never left Charlotte. For him, he had to kill Charlotte today. No one could stop him. Not even the gods. Charlotte clenched his fists. If he was also a saint, even if he was the 19th level, he would fly into the sky and fight George Hadrian to the death, but he was not a saint, and he couldn't even leave his feet off the ground. Charlotte growled in a low voice, "Sooner or later, I will make you regret killing so many of my men," but George Hadrian did not answer him because he was back in battle. Vigo suddenly cried out and fell from the sky. Charlotte could not help but run over and stretched out her arms to help the flame paladin. Vigo was seriously injured, but there was still a glimmer of hope. Charlotte slowly put him on the ground and said, "Don't be afraid, I will let you save you." Vigo looked ashamed and whispered, "I won't die, I'm not seriously injured." Charlotte waved her hand and asked the medical officer to carry Vigo down. At this time, there were at least 10 figures missing in the sky, including his men and George Hadrian's men. The losses of both sides even exceeded that of a major battle. On the battlefield, although the Holy Order decided the outcome, the Holy Order rarely fought to the death. In most cases, the Holy Order would choose to retreat when facing a battle that was bound to be lost. After all, the saints can fly and have high mobility. Even if they are stronger, it is not easy to kill the opponent. Moreover, most of the saints are either acquainted or have some relatives. Even saints from different countries can be more or less related. Not many people are willing to kill in a saint battle. If it were not a battle of life and death to destroy a country, such a tragic scene would never happen. Dozens of brilliances, crisscrossing in the sky, for ordinary people in Black Phoenix City, this is more beautiful than the fireworks of the festival. After all, fireworks are only a moment, but the fighting spirit of the saints is close to eternity. The battle soon lasted until late at night. Even with Charlotte's ability, he could not see the battle in the sky clearly, but he refused to relax. Every enemy saint who fell down would be moved to the Holy Light Kingdom by him. This legendary battleship is extremely eager for the blood and vitality of these saints. Every body moved onto this legendary battleship will disappear without a trace. At the bottom of the legendary battleship, the divine creature Amabella suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes became brighter and brighter, giving rise to endless exciting and clear light. He murmured in a low voice, "Pendragon. Pendragon. Pendragon." After a while, he whispered softly, "Charlotte Mecklen. Charlotte Mecklen. Charlotte Mecklen." After a while, he whispered again, "Amen, Amen, Amen." When Amabella read Pendragon and Charlotte Mecklen, no one responded, but when he said Amen, a young man made of clear light said softly, "Mother. You called me, Pendragon is my father, Charlotte Mecklen is my husband, and Amen is my son." I remember. I remember everything, Amen. Go help your father." The young man made of clear light smiled gently. "Yes, mother, but I don't have enough strength," Amabella whispered in a low voice. "I'll lend it to you, I'll lend it to you." The youth's radiance suddenly became stronger. Charlotte's arm suddenly felt hot, and he took out his diary. Suddenly he remembered that he actually had a little trick up his sleeve. He exchanged 2 volumes of The Labyrinth of Agneris from Domitian, and more than 10 volumes of ancient paintings that depicted the true appearance of this overseas maze evil god. Although countless cities have been turned into mazes, the Labyrinth of Agneris has not been used up, and the more than 10 volumes of ancient paintings have not been used. Charlotte whispered to herself, "So it's to remind me to use them." Charlotte took out a volume of ancient paintings and tore them apart gently. Domitian once said that this thing was useless, but Charlotte knew that this thing was different in his hands. Sure enough, the torn ancient paintings gave birth to countless maze corridors, and even the breath of the evil god leaked out. Charlotte couldn't care about these anymore. He was going to fight. As long as he could increase his strength, what did he care about in the future? He didn't notice that on the last page of the Saint Light Kingdom's logbook, there was a line of words, "Father, I can help you." Chapter 448, Mirror Shadow and Mirror Demon. Just as the maze formed by the ancient painting covered the sky above the Black Phoenix City, Georgette Hadrian shattered it with a shot. He said lightly, "It's just a trick to summon the evil god. What's the use of it?" Charlotte looked at Agneris's labyrinth. This ancient painting added 23 pages of mazes to him, which made him ecstatic. He put all these pages of mazes into his eyes. The silver mirror, which originally had only 4 sides, quietly condensed the 5th side under the impact of more than 10 pages of Agneris's labyrinth. Charlotte immediately sensed that he had gained another supernatural power, the shadow of the mirror. The shadow of the mirror can reflect any enemy, even oneself, and turn into a false character. It can temporarily have the power to match the original object. Of course, the limit cannot be higher than Charlotte himself. Charlotte did not hesitate and continued to put Agneris's labyrinth into it, but this time, until there was no more page left, only the cover page, he still did not condense the 5th bloody rune of the infinite mirror world. Charlotte looked at the sky and tore up another ancient painting. Georgette Hadrian didn't even bother to take another look this time. He casually shot and destroyed the labyrinth that just appeared in the air. At the end of the labyrinth, the evil god howled in anger. He had never been humiliated like this. Charlotte did not hesitate at all. She tore up more than 10 ancient paintings that she had exchanged from Domitian one by one. The labyrinth and the shadow of the evil god Agneris appeared in the sky again and again, but the result was the same every time. It was destroyed by Georgette Hadrian with one shot. Every time, Charlotte could sense the anger of Agneris. This evil god might be going crazy. He had never thought that someone would repeatedly summon him and destroy the labyrinth formed by his breath again and again. He also wanted to forcibly transmit evil power, but every time, no matter how much evil power he transmitted, it would be crushed by others. When the last summons disappeared, the labyrinth evil god was confused. He kept howling. He couldn't understand the thoughts of these mortals at all. What on earth did they want to do? Toy with himself? Toy with the evil god? How is this possible? Agneris racked his brains, but couldn't figure out what happened in the distant old continent. Georgette Hadrian broke the labyrinth more than 10 times in a row. For a peak saint like him, the breath of the evil god was nothing to be afraid of. Charlotte no longer had the ancient painting in her hand, and she couldn't summon the evil god's labyrinth again. Georgette Hadrian joined the battle again. After being blocked by the evil god's labyrinth for more than 10 times in a row, his fighting spirit was even higher. Even with the help of the holy light god, Kratos was still defeated and could not resist. This Earl, who had never shown his fame on the continent, performed even better than the so-called strongest of the 5 empires. Charlotte kept putting Agneris' labyrinth into the infinite mirror world. After reaching X5 in the infinite mirror world, he found that this power was like the infinite abyss. He didn't know how many pages of Agneris' labyrinth he had put in, but the 5 silver blood runes were no longer moving. It was not until he had put in more than 100 pages of Agneris' labyrinth that his eyes suddenly felt painful. He faintly heard the sound of a mirror shattering, and the 6th mirror composed of silver runes appeared in his eyes. Infinite Mirror World X6. Charlotte obtained the 6th power, Mirror Demon. Mirror Demon can transform any living being into a Mirror Demon and become an assistant. It is often called the housekeeper of the Infinite Mirror World. It is very similar to the magic contract document, but there is only one quota for life. Only when the current mirror demon dies and the quota is vacated can the next mirror demon be transformed. Charlotte threw all the Agrimulus labyrinth derived from the ancient painting into the infinite mirror world, but the seventh bloody rune did not appear, and the mirror composed of the seventh silver rune did not appear in his eyes. Charlotte put away the diary and looked up at the sky. He wanted to join the battle, but his last effort still failed to break the limit of the holy level. Charlotte felt that he was just a little short of breaking through the holy level. He roared softly, and there was a sense of anger in his heart that wanted to vent, but his inner reason told him that he had to stay calm and not have any impulse. At this time, a light darker than the dark night swept down from the sky, and a black knight's spear pointed at Georgia de Hadrian. Charlotte's heart was suddenly cleared, and she shouted, "Antonio!" Although Antonio, who came to join the battle, was shot back by Georgia de Hadrian, he behaved calmly, and even raised the Dark Knight to say hello to Charlotte, and then joined the battle. There is only one level difference between the 23rd and 24th levels, but the gap is as big as heaven and earth. Kratos was beaten back despite having the Holy Light God Kingdom, but Antonio turned the situation around as soon as he made a move. When the two of them joined forces, the battle situation was reversed. If they fought alone, neither Kratos, who was assisted by the Holy Light God Kingdom, nor Antonio, who had the Dark Knight in his hand, could match Georgia de Hadrian. But when the two of them joined forces, even this newly rising first military god of the continent still felt helpless. The talent he showed recently was the demeanor of a first-class general. After knowing that Antonio appeared, it was impossible to kill Charlotte. Georgia de Hadrian roared, shook Antonio away with a shot, and slowly retreated. When he withdrew from the battle circle, because the Holy Light God Kingdom could not move at all, Kratos naturally had no way to pursue. Antonio was the only one left, and he wisely did not pursue, but guarded near the Black Phoenix city. After Antonio came to help, both sides wanted to retreat. They helped their own saints to withdraw from the battle. After all the saints withdrew from the battle, Georgia de Hadrian led the last elites of the Black Phoenix and retreated to the sea. Before leaving, Georgia de Hadrian raised his knight's lance from a distance and pointed it at Charlotte. With his other hand, he fiercely scratched her neck and made a throat-cutting gesture. Charlotte was slightly surprised. This gesture did not exist in the old world. This gesture was one of the etiquettes he often used in novels. In daily life, he would occasionally use it. After all, this gesture was simple and domineering. Charlotte really didn't expect that there would be such a day when someone would show him this fierce etiquette. Charlotte responded with a middle finger. Georgia de Hadrian casually pushed his thumb down and then left with his men. Antonio landed beside Charlotte and whispered, "These gestures are all original from your novels." "This guy is a fan of your novels." Charlotte suddenly had an idea and thought, could it be that this guy learned the tactics of defeating the four nations from my novels? He immediately threw this absurd idea out of his mind. After all, the original authors of those novels probably had no command skills and were all military idiots. How could anyone learn military knowledge from books? Charlotte said, "You came just in time. If you were a little later, my saint rank might have been lost." Charlotte looked at the 7 saint rank corpses on the ground and felt extremely distressed. 2 of the 4 nobles who surrendered to him died, leaving only 2 earls. 4 of the 6 saint ranks who surrendered died, and 1 was a subordinate of Duchess Misu. The number of saints killed on Georgia de Hadrian's side was similar to that of Charlotte's side, but the dead saints were fed to the Holy Light Kingdom by him, so there were no more bodies. Well, among the 10 saints under his command, Vigo was too weak and was seriously injured, but no one died, and even Andreas was still active. Even from the battle, the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix had also improved his strength and entered the 20th level of transcendence. Antonio looked at the more than 20 saints around Charlotte and couldn't help but ask, "How did you get so many saints?" Charlotte replied lightly, "This is called the righteous will have many supporters. Our actions are just. We are for the future of all people, not for power and selfishness. Therefore, there will be more and more comrades who bear this pain." Antonio had only one thought, "I am so stupid. I knew he would brag. Why did I ask this question? It's just asking for trouble." No matter what, Antonio came at the right time. If it weren't for Antonio, Georgia de Hadrian would definitely fight to the death with Charlotte. The result is conceivable. Charlotte's men must be killed. Of course, this Count Georgia de Hadrian will also pay a certain price. However, in the mind of Count Georgia de Hadrian, His country is gone, his hometown is gone, and the emperor is dead. It doesn't matter whether people die or not. He himself doesn't want to live anymore. Charlotte feels the same way about this. Antonio quickly changed the subject and said, "Father asked me to protect you. During this period, you can't take any more risks. We already control the Black Phoenix City. This is the biggest trump card and the biggest benefit of dividing the Black Phoenix," Charlotte said vigilantly. "His Majesty the Emperor of Brittany said at the beginning that all the land I conquered will belong to me, and no one can snatch it from me." Antonio couldn't help laughing and said, "Father will certainly not go back on his word, but the other 3 countries may not agree to this. So we also have to guard against friendly forces." Charlotte nodded and said to the saint beside her, "Anyone from the Byron, Ingrimer, or Lionheart dynasty who wants to enter the Black Phoenix City will be killed. Don't listen to a word they say." Antonio couldn't help but say, "It's not necessary to be so paranoid." Chapter 449, Charlotte's starting team. Charlotte thought for a moment and said, "Yes, I have some friends in Baron, Ingrama and the Lionheart dynasty." Antonio glanced at Adosa and said, "Junior Adosa, how did Charlotte trick you into joining the pirate ship?" Although Antonio is the future strongest man in the empire, he is really young. When he was in school, he was only 2 years older than Adosa. He actually met Adosa Misa several times on campus, and the two knew each other. Although Duchess Misu has thrown herself into Baron's arms, it is now the honeymoon period of the four-nation alliance, and Antonio's attitude is quite friendly. Adosa smiled slightly and said, "Mother made a deal with him. He gave up Cessus, and we helped him attack Black Phoenix City. However, at that time, we did not expect that the dying Black Phoenix would produce such a powerful figure as Georgiade Hadrian, and even killed Uncle Zunsa. I think we have reason to ask for compensation," Charlotte said without hesitation. "The death of Mr. Zunsa is indeed very regrettable. Please go back and tell Grand Duchess Misu, I am willing to compensate the Northern Fleet with a magic alchemy battleship. Life is priceless. Mr. Zunsa died for me. If he has a wife, children and relatives, you can send them to Black Phoenix, and I will be responsible for arranging their future lives." Adosa was immediately shocked by Charlotte's generosity. She probably didn't know the story of buying horse bones for 1,000 gold coins. Charlotte was not compensating the Northern Fleet, but reassuring all her subordinates. Especially those who surrendered to the Black Phoenix. He contributed the most in the war, because they all knew one thing, Charlotte still had a way out. He was a Farsian, but they really had no way out. They were backed by the Black Phoenix, but they had betrayed the Black Phoenix, and the Black Phoenix dynasty was gone. That's why 6 of the 7 saints who died in the battle were Black Phoenix who surrendered. Charlotte didn't waste a performance just now, and said to everyone, "I will always remember those who died for me today. The Mecklen family will never treat their subjects badly. Baron X's son will inherit his title, and his family has been under the protection of the Mecklen family for generations. The descendants of Viscount Ankyloy are also like this, except for the subordinate of Duchess Misu. The other 7 saints who died became his subjects in Charlotte's mouth. In fact, only Baron Exon expressed his surrender. But these saints died in the battle, and their families must be in a state of panic, after all, without the most powerful guardian." At this time, a great noble said that he was willing to guarantee their status and take care of their family forever, and almost no one would refuse to be loyal. The remaining 4 Black Phoenix saints heard Charlotte's impassioned speech, looked at each other, knelt on one knee together, and said loudly, "We are willing to swear allegiance to the Mecklen family until death." They may have had their own thoughts before, but Charlotte was able to take over the Black Phoenix City, repel Georgiade Hadrian, and with the support of Prince Antonio of Fars, he would definitely become the ruler of the city. Charlotte was able to occupy the Black Phoenix City, and no one could stop him from swallowing up the nearby direct counties. Charlotte Mecklen will surely become the top noble in the old world, comparable to those old families with hundreds of years of foundation. For example, Brittany, Misu, and even Guillaume and Axel. Not to mention, now Charlotte Mecklen not only has countless armies under her command, but also has 10 loyal saints. This strength can be ranked among the top families in Fars and even in the old world. Charlotte did not make any gestures and gladly accepted the new loyalist. Antonio did not stop Charlotte at all. Instead, he had an expression that said, "I was standing up for my brother-in-law," and smiled the whole time. Antonio's attitude basically represents the attitude of the Breton family, and also represents the attitude of the new Breton dynasty and the Fars Empire. This made the nobles who swore allegiance feel much more at ease. It's not that they had never thought about being loyal to Antonio, but the nobles are very particular about their background. The Breton family has no shortage of loyalists. Even if they defected to the past, they would not replace the old subordinates of the Breton family, but the Mechlin family is an exception. Now this family only has Charlotte. If they defected to Charlotte, they would be the starting team of Charlotte, the oldest subordinates. Charlotte appeased all her subordinates, retained Antonio, and waited patiently for a few days, but she did not wait for Count Georgiade Hadrian to come to raid again. She only got the news that the Count had seized control of the last navy of the Black Phoenix, set sail on the sea, and left the old continent. Before leaving, Georgiade Hadrian sent a letter to all the Black Phoenix nobles. I have shed the last drop of blood for His Majesty the Emperor. From today on, I am no longer a Black Phoenix person. I will lead my followers to establish a new country. Georgiade Hadrian defeated the Four-Nation Alliance in one battle, and then frantically returned to support the Black Phoenix City. He fought a shocking battle in the Black Phoenix City, and has won great prestige in the hearts of the Black Phoenix people. Moreover, the Four-Nation Alliance immediately made a comeback, but Count Georgiade Hadrian, who was able to resist the Four-Nation Alliance, had already left the Black Phoenix. So next, the nobles of the Black Phoenix successively brought the wealth accumulated by their families for hundreds of years and took the fleet to chase Georgiade Hadrian. The 12 most core direct counties of the Black Phoenix even saw the spectacle of thousands of sails entering the sea. When Charlotte learned about this, she immediately began to seize the territory. The Knights of Favonius attacked vigorously and seized all the places they could grab. The noble leaders who encountered obstacles temporarily would also announce that they had captured them and planted a flag first. With the advantage of geographical location, Charlotte seized 11 of the 12 core direct counties of the Black Phoenix before the Four-Nation Coalition forces. When the Four-Nation Coalition forces captured Sahuarimagan and marched all the way to Nodok County, what was waiting for them was not the remnants of the Black Phoenix, but Charlotte's Knights of Favonius. Although the Emperor of Brittany was embarrassed, he quickly made a choice to merge with his future son-in-law. The commander of Ingrimer, Earl Marlock, immediately initiated a diplomatic note to convene a four-nation conference to divide the territory of Black Phoenix. The Lionheart dynasty and Byron also expressed the same attitude. They could not sit idly by and watch Fars swallow up the most fertile core land of Black Phoenix. The Emperor of Brittany also did not want a three-nation coalition to attack Fars, so he agreed to hold a meeting and asked the four countries to leave their troops in place and only let the nobles who participated in the meeting go to Black Phoenix City for the meeting. Chapter 450, The Shame of the Legendary Battleship Dalmabase. Adossa's identity was awkward. After all, Duchess Misa had betrayed Fars and thrown herself into the arms of Byron. So when Charlotte and the Fars royal knights joined forces, she ran to Charlotte to say goodbye. Charlotte was quite nice to the senior. First, the Mechlin family and the Misu family had agreed to be friendly allies. Second, his territory would definitely border the northern territory of the Misa family. There would be a lot of exchanges in the future, so they had to build a good relationship. Not only did he hand over a magic alchemy warship to Adossa as agreed, he also gave away 10 warships and a group of Black Phoenix Navy that were unwilling to surrender to Fars. Although Adossa was very interested in Charlotte, she also knew that this was not a good time to make a move, so she only agreed with Charlotte to meet in the future and gave him a gift. A sculpture of an evil god she got overseas. Charlotte tore up more than a dozen ancient paintings in a row. Although everyone had a tacit understanding, and no one said anything or dared to leak out the story of summoning the labyrinth evil god Agmirus, after seeing that scene, everyone thought that Charlotte might like this thing. In fact, many nobles also liked this thing, but no one dared to do it too blatantly. After all, the 9 gods would indeed tour this world. Adossa took his subordinates, the Holy Order, away, and Charlotte was inexplicably relieved. He soon got a new appointment. This appointment was not Fars's appointment, but a joint appointment by the Four-Nation Coalition. He became the General Coordinator of the Four-Nation Alliance's Black Phoenix Conference. He was fully responsible for receiving the high-ranking officials from various countries who attended the meeting. Although His Majesty the Emperor of Brittany participated in the war, it was obviously not suitable for him to attend this kind of meeting, so Fars was convenient for the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Count D'Artagnan, and the Minister of War, Count Galinold, to participate in this meeting. The lineup was luxurious. The person who participated in the meeting of Ingram was Count Lanmerock. This victorious Count of Champagne was very dissatisfied with the result of the war, especially that the fruits of victory in the final war were stolen by Fars. He advocated a fair division of the 12 core direct counties of the Black Phoenix. The people who came to Bayron to participate in the meeting were all old acquaintances of the Emperor of Brittany and Charlotte. One was Juno Arthur, the strongest man in Bayron, whom Charlotte had to call a teacher. The other was Count Constantine, the newly promoted Count of Bayron and the former strongest man of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Well, the former strongest man of the Black Phoenix dynasty who was defeated head-on by Georgia de Hadrian. The people who came from the Lionheart dynasty were very coincidental. Charlotte also knew them, and even quite familiar with them. The representative of the Lionheart dynasty, who was of excellent status, was the crown prince of the Lionheart, Brunhild Asa. Brunhild's adjutant, who was also an acquaintance of Charlotte, was Conroe. Because of so many acquaintances, even Count Lanmerock, although he had never met Charlotte, had a good impression of him because of Ben Lanmerock. After being defeated by Charlotte, Ben Lanmerock closed himself off for nearly a year and successfully broke through the saint rank. Compared with his son's promotion to the saint rank, losing a duel and losing a whale-killing pole were trivial matters. Count Lanmerock always regretted that his son was too young to compete with Antonio. Now that his son has finally stepped onto the starting line, he still hopes that Ben Lanmerock will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Antonio in 10 years and fight for himself. Because of personal friendship, Charlotte encountered almost no trouble when arranging the four-nation negotiation delegation. Although he did not understand aristocratic etiquette very well, the Emperor of Brittany still sent his son out as his deputy. Antonio was a legitimate old-fashioned aristocrat, and was proficient in all kinds of etiquette, which was enough to fill in the gaps for Charlotte. When the four delegations arrived at Black Phoenix City and settled down, Charlotte felt as if he had shed a layer of skin. He had to face the top masters of each country every day. The pressure was really great. Although he had some friendship with the representatives of each country, and even had a very close relationship with the representatives of some countries, such as Juno Arthur and the Crown Prince of Lionheart, Brunhild Asa, the pressure was not relieved at all. You know, when the interests rise to the national level, personal relationships are like small things like stones on the roadside. Before the meeting, the countries must communicate privately and reach various tacit understandings. When the meeting really comes, many things must have been decided. So before the meeting, Charlotte will have a little rest time. He took the time to give himself a vacation and go to see a legendary battleship. Well, Black Phoenix also has its own legendary battleship. And it was docked at the port of Black Phoenix City. Because Black Phoenix City was empty, Charlotte attacked and broke the city in one go, causing the legendary battleship Dalma Base and 6 magic alchemy battleships of Black Phoenix to fall directly into Charlotte's hands. This is the last foundation of the Black Phoenix Navy. This legendary battleship has a nickname, the Shame of the Legendary Battleship. Because the legendary battleship built by Black Phoenix with all the power of the country is not a battle fortress on the sea, but a palace on the sea built for the Emperor's cruise. In terms of luxury, it is the first in the history of the old continent. Even those legendary battleships in ancient times cannot compare, but in terms of combat capability, well, it was captured before. And it was on the front battlefield. The person who captured it was the first military god of Fars, 100 years ago, the last generation of Duke Robin. The father of the current old Duke Robin. Although it was later recaptured by the brave navy of Black Phoenix, it has since been given such a nickname. Even in this war on the old world, Black Phoenix did not dare to send this legendary battleship to the battlefield, because its actual combat power was only slightly better than that of an ordinary magic alchemy battleship. It would not be able to withstand the siege of 2 or 3 magic alchemy battleships. For Charlotte Mecklen, this was certainly not a problem. He finally had a legendary battleship that could be driven out. What else could he ask for? When Charlotte stepped onto the Dalmabass, she was quite excited. This legendary battleship was huge, not inferior to the Holy Light Kingdom. Magnificent everywhere, with towering shipbuildings, majestic, and not inferior to any palace on land. It was also the palace of several generations of Black Phoenix emperors. Every summer, the emperors of Black Phoenix would board a Dalmabass and escape the heat on the sea. Charlotte thought about it for a long time, and he would hand over this legendary battleship to the Flame Paladin Vigo to command. The Dalmabass itself was not very powerful, and even if it was handed over to a strong saint, it would not be able to play much of a role. Vigo was injured and the living environment of this legendary battleship was excellent, and he was just recovering on this legendary battleship. Well, Charlotte definitely did not dislike Vigo's weak combat power. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.